the meeting. We have two members who may yet join us. Steve or Brian, can we start with the roll call?
Sure, I can take care of that. Ms. Lankowski? Mr. Patches?
Here.
Ms. Jordan Byron?
Present.
Mr. Rowena?
Here.
Ms. Wells? She's here, we saw that. Ms. Langalis?
Here.
Mr. Cantor?
Here.
Mr. Williams? I think he's here. We're
He
gonna
is
call. And Mr. Shulman?
here. Based on the attendance, we can have both alternates, both Mr. Patches and Ms. Lankowski participate fully in it, at least the first item. We'll see if Anna shows up, and if she does, we'll rotate. With that, the first item is 2024-41 CAM, City of Norwalk, 98 South Main Street, District 2, Block 62, Lot 10, construction of a gymnasium addition to the Norwalk Community Recreation Center. May I ask who's presenting?
I think that might be me. Can you hear
Okay,
me okay?
please go ahead.
Oh, and Joanne, I can't hear you. Okay, so I am Amanda Cleveland. I'm with Silver Petroselli and Associates. We are the architecture firm that was hired by the City of Norwalk for the Community Recreation Center. So tonight, what we are presenting is a plan review of the project. And if you'd like, I'll just give you a sort of high level of where we are currently with the project. Would you like me to screen share any plans, or does everybody have that available?
No, why don't you screen share the plans? I think we may have some questions.
Okay. So hopefully you are seeing my screen.
We are.
Okay. So I am zooming in just very quickly right now on the site demolition plan so that you can see, and hopefully my cat doesn't jump in the scene here. The existing building is here located on 98 South Main Street. There is an existing drive aisle between us and the adjacent church, as well as parking in the rear that is for the adjacent Ryan Park. What our project is proposing is an addition off of the back, which you see here shown in gray. This is a gym addition, so enclosed in that space is a high school sized gymnasium, as well as a storage room, a separate entrance. It has male and female restrooms, as well as a dedicated shower, as well as a family restroom. And it does also connect back to the existing building. With this addition, we are looking to make a slight modification to the parking in the back, so that will be removed. And we will then rework the site to accommodate the new addition. We currently are not affecting any of the playscapes in the back, only the landscaping. And as you can see from our, I think this is the grading and utility plan, right now the flood zone for this property does run partway through the new proposed gymnasium. So this will be built, right now you're seeing it saying elevation 13.86. That's actually been corrected since we've submitted this. We understand that the floodplain has to be BFE +2. So this will now be put in at 14. Our flood zone is at 12. So the new building will be built at 14. There is a portion of the existing building that is currently non-compliant because it is at 13.86, while the front of the building is between 15 and 16 at the entrance. So again, the new addition will be built at the BFE +2. And then for the 3 existing doors to the building that are currently at the non-compliant 13.86, the project will be proposing floodgates at those entrances. All of the utilities, mechanical equipment are on the roof. There's no basement to the facility. And their site utilities will be either located outside that floodplain or will also be compliant with the BFE +2. So I think that's sort of the very quick overview of the project. We're currently completing construction documents for the end of this month. And so we're just looking forward to your feedback.
It's unfortunate that Alan Lowe couldn't be with us this evening. However, he did write a memo regarding the roof,
Correct.
indicating, I believe, that solar panels were not economically feasible on the roof. We've given you a number of options for roofing. I'm not comfortable, frankly, with approving this unless or until we know what it is and see the plans for what you're going to do on that roof.
Okay.
We understand this is a municipal project. Nonetheless, we think we ought to hold the city to the same standards that we would hold either an individual or a corporation that was doing something similar to this.
Correct. So I know, and I'm going to forget the terminology specifically. One of those options was, I believe, a cold roof. So essentially putting down a membrane that's a light color and will reflect light. So that is our intention to do that. We are still designing the project to be able to accommodate future PV should they decide to do that in the future. So all of the infrastructure will be in place. The existing building can support PV and the new addition will be built so that it can support future PV.
Are there other questions?
And I have two questions on that. One is just remind me, I think you said at the beginning, but I forgot, I apologize. This is a gym that's going to be available for the public use? Is that right? Okay, cool. And then to echo what Chairman Schulman said on the sort of sustainability requirements, I'd also just ask you to, if you can push Alan a little bit or talk to Alan about were other options of solar considered here, because it feels often that we get from the city, we talk to SNU can't do it, or it doesn't work out that way, and we're sort of like washing our hands of this. And it's hard to reconcile the want and desire to be the greenest city in Connecticut with that sort of mentality coming from the city. I appreciate the cool roof here, and it makes sense given what you said, given the numbers in the document here. So I'm not saying anyone's lying by any means. It's more of it feels like one thing was tried and were other things, or what's the best use of that space, and it's just not clear to me that every option was considered versus just, hey, this might be the easiest thing.
Gotcha. And we are also providing energy efficient systems. So we're not just stopping at the PV. We are looking at mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems, all to make it the greenest building possible.
That's great.
Nick, I would remind you and the other commissioners as well that for the new South Norwalk School, the Board of Education was able to work out an arrangement with SNU so that they could put solar on the roof at a cost that was affordable. I wonder if maybe the Board of Education ought to be negotiating this roofing scheme with SNU rather than the city itself.
I think Joanne's very quiet, but she's trying to say something.
Sure, go
All
ahead.
right, I'm sorry. I'm trying, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. If you could turn your volume up, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out why that's so low. I can certainly talk loud though.
Okay.
So I am here in place of Alan. I am actually his assistant, and he's as you know, going to be out for a bit. For medical reasons. As Amanda said, yes, we have looked at other ways to go to the LEED, maybe LEED Silver, and have exhausted many possibilities. Unfortunately, as Alan has laid out there, it's not financially feasible in the SNU area. And because SNU is able to offer the South Norwalk residents a much cheaper price than the Eversource residents in the remainder of Norwalk. And that means that Eversource is able to give back an incentive. SNU is not, it does not have that capability because they are not overcharging their residents. So there is no money coming back, and it would actually cost us money from year one all the way through its duration of the solar panels. So that's why we have moved to trying to find another way, and we've started researching the cool roof. And as Amanda said, there's many other ways that we are looking for green ways to support the environment. So I'm not sure at this point. We're in the process of talking about the Sono School actually, and we're hitting those roadblocks as well. There's a possibility we might allow SNU to use our space and to be able to use solar in the area. And unfortunately, the cost analysis that we've been doing is not so easy to understand. So basically, they did do an RFP out to contractors, etc., and they're finding that it costs 15 to 20 cents a kilowatt hour versus the 7 to 8 cents that South Norwalk residents are now paying. So there's a lot of work to be done, in the administration needs to decide if we're moving forward with Sono and how that's going to work, but those conversations are still happening. But to rest assured that we have exhausted the possibilities of the rec center.
Are there other questions?
I'll just jump in, Chairman Schulman.
Sure, go
So
ahead.
with however you guys end up looking at whether you want to hold off a vote or if you're comfortable conditioning an approval based on the cool roof with the future consideration for solar. I mean, there are benefits to the cool roof. It is one of the options that the applicant is afforded, where they're able to kind of offset some urban heat island effect from what you'd see from a typical dark colored roof. So I mean, there are benefits to the cool roof system that can be implemented here that would be beneficial.
Brian, let's put up the approval and have the commission talk about that.
Sure. Amanda, can
If
you?
I could just ask either Ms. Cleveland or the other, is the gymnasium attached from the interior so that people that are using the front part of the building have access to get to the gym? And is it only basketball, or can the court be used for other things?
Sure. We are attached to the building. So there is a set of existing doors that will be connecting to a hallway. And the court right now is planned to be striped for basketball, pickleball, and volleyball.
Okay, thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
it's 2 stories or however tall a gymnasium needs to be, but then there aren't any usable floors above it. It would just be the roof.
That's correct.
Okay. And is there any landscaping plan? I mean, I know it's very tight there.
Yes.
And you back up to Ryan Park, any big trees planned or anything like that?
Yes, so our site plan actually predates adding in a couple of tree islands at the front of the building, because we know that we do like to keep the landscaping nice on the outside, and then will be any of the grass that will be disturbing will be replanted.
Thank you.
And what about natural lighting for windows?
Correct. So on the front of the building, we are if you are familiar with the front of the existing building, they're very small, narrow windows. So on the front, we are actually looking to widen and elongate the windows on the front of the building, as well as creating a larger glazed opening of storefront from the street side. The size of the building of the existing building are remaining the same. We are not punching any additional openings, and that's predominantly because to the right of the building, if you're facing it, we're hard up against private residence, and on the left side we have a lot of traffic and the church on the side. The new gymnasium will have glazing as part of the new entry that gets you into the gym, as well as on the back we do have glazed doors as well as some windows above, but we've limited a little bit only because we want to prevent too much glare for basketball.
Right. Will the windows be able to open for ventilation, or are they just for?
No, they will be fixed because the systems will be dealing with fresh air intake. We find when you have operable windows, people open them and then it overworks the mechanical system and it shortens the lifespan.
Okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Brian, I understand that if this is a non-conforming building and they're doing interior work in a non-conforming building, there's no issue with the elevation. But here they're putting on a very substantial addition. Does that one portion of the building that is non-compliant, non-flood compliant, is it allowed to remain non-compliant, or does it need to be raised because of the addition to the building?
Right. So Ms. Cleveland sort of explained with the existing building, because it's a commercial building, you're able to essentially dry floodproof it, which means you're able to put in those floodgates. So if there were flooding conditions, those storm gates would get installed, which would prevent water from getting into the building. So that is would consider the building to be flood compliant. The flood regs are a little quirky where if you, because the existing building right now is not in the flood zone. But if you put an addition on it and the addition is in the flood zone, essentially what you've done is now the whole building is considered to be in the flood zone. So because the addition is going on, now we need to start worrying about the existing building. But again, those floodgates would satisfy the flood zone requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, if not, again, let's put up the approval letter and see how the commission would like to deal with it.
Well, I guess one question on this, if we scroll up, Brian, it looks like there, if I remember correctly, there's two parts of the sustainability requirements. If I'm remembering and reading it correctly here, there's the first part, which is what you do with the roof, right? Which we have clear indication, cool roof system. The second, and then there's the second piece here, which do we have clarity on at this point? Right, it's the confirmation roof will comprise of sustainable roofing covering, right? Cool roof, cool, check. Demonstration that the addition shall either be certified LEED, Enterprise Green Communities or National Green Standards, and 75% of the development stormwater is retained. Do we, then the next two, we don't, am I missing clarification on this piece?
No, I don't think you are.
So I guess I'm going to try and answer this as best as I can. I apologize that my other teammates aren't here to do that. As far as the second, so we are looking to follow, I'm missing the name now. So we're calling it LEED inspired. So we are not actually going for LEED certification, but we are looking to check as many boxes as we can. I think it's, I can't remember the name. Connecticut businesses are required high performance building systems. So we are following the high performance building, which essentially is I believe a LEED silver inspired. So we are designing all of our systems as well as our material selections in that manner. In terms of the stormwater, I know that there is a stormwater management plan in place. I apologize that my engineer unfortunately did not get back to me to confirm that third item about that, but I can get that information to the team very quickly.
It does not sound as if you're meeting that requirement as passive house, energy fit, or LEED 0.
Yeah, so they, it would, they'd
Why,
fall
why,
under,
Well, they're
why?
following the
not?
first
Silver.
one, Lou. Sorry, Brian, I think you were about to say the same thing. Go ahead, Brian.
yeah, so there's, for this one, wait, I keep getting Zoom errors on my screen. There's 3 different options that we've made to applicants when they build buildings this large. The first one is the LEED silver option plus.
Oh, and Brian froze.
Oh, no.
That was brilliant.
Oh,
Oh, did we
That's-
lose them?
that's
He's back
really
We
now.
didn't hear,
bad.
we couldn't hear what you said after
I'm
LEED silver.
gonna make Steve the co-host in case that happens
Yeah.
again.
Okay.
Yeah, so
So-
basically there are three different paths they can choose. So they, in each one provides different options for them to pursue. We spent a lot of time, if you recall, on what actually certifiable means. We spent a lot of time just making sure that they didn't have to get the certification, but they had to demonstrate. And I think, I don't know if Brian has that language in his resolution, but a qualified professional has to attest to the fact that it would meet the LEED silver criteria. Because we understand going through the LEED silver certification itself is a pretty daunting task and expensive. So we didn't want to necessarily ask somebody to get a piece of paper as opposed to having the qualified professional who's got the, obvious credentials to say, yes, this would meet the standards.
Correct. So the Connecticut High Performance Building is basically the state's version of LEED silver.
Okay, if that's what they're going to do, then it seems to me we ought to put that in the requirements down below. Same with regard to the roof. We ought to say white roof specifically, so that we know what we're getting, and there's a way of making sure that that's what we get.
Yeah, I would recommend you put that in there as a requirement prior to obtaining the zoning permit. Because once it's built, it's a little hard to go backwards, so.
Right, I agree.
Brian, is it really that the roof will be able to accommodate solar panels, or if it will? You don't have to be both.
Right, so
Um,
they, how I think Amanda was saying was they're gonna do the cool roof system, and they're gonna design the roof where they could put solar panels on it in the future. But
Right,
they
could or might, but not, it doesn't have to be. Because
Right.
what if the cool roof can't accommodate the equipment?
The cool roof should be able to accommodate. It's making sure that the building structurally can support the weight of the systems.
Okay.
All right. Are there any other changes that commission members are looking for?
So Brian, this is the documentation about the lead, whatever we just talked about.
Good.
Brian, do they have to do the, with that, is that second part of that first need to be included in that as well, that stormwater? I mean, you can put it as one, I don't care how you write it.
Right. Okay, can I have a motion to approve this resolution?
Motion to approve.
Okay, motion's been made by JJ. Is there a second?
I can second the call.
Okay, it's been seconded. Anna, because you came late and we only had 2 open slots, you can't vote on this one, but you'll be able to vote on the next. We're going to rotate, and everybody will have a chance to vote this evening. Okay, Steve, let's do a roll call. And we're voting on approving the resolution.
Sure. Ms. Jordan Byron,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Rowena,
Yes.
Mr. Cantor,
Yes.
Ms. Wells. Not in the affirmative, Mr. Patches,
Yes.
Ms. Lankowski,
Yes.
Ms. Langalis,
Yes.
and Mr. Schulman.
Yes.
So unanimous.
Okay, please send our best to Alan with our regrets that I guess that he's not going to be playing any more volleyball.
Oh, no, definitely not. But thank you. I will pass it along.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amanda.
Second item, and for the second item, I'll seat Ms. Tabachnik in place of Mr. Patches.
Oh,
Thank
you.
and I'll take this opportunity to bow out now.
Oh, if you're going to bow out, then I can seat everybody.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank
good
you,
night,
JJ.
everyone. Okay.
Okay, all the alternates can fully participate and vote. 2023-32, SP CAM, City of Norwalk, 1 Meadow Street Extension, District 2, Block 27, Lot 71, modification to approve site plan for the construction of the new South Norwalk Elementary School. And who is going to be presenting?
Dan, are you gonna present or do you want me to?
Yeah, I can present.
Okay.
Give me one moment. Share my screen. Okay, let me know if you can see my screen all right.
We can.
Okay, so zoom out a little bit here. This is the lower half of our site plan for the South Norwalk Elementary School. This was the original plan that was submitted for the special permit approval. As you can see, with this plan, we tucked our parking lot in between the existing properties. There was a spur line along South Main Street, and then 5 properties along Oxford and wrapping around onto Meadow Street. This is the first property that's kind of standalone, and the rest of them, 1, 2, 3, and 4, are a block on the corner of this site. Since I know that there's a memo that went out, it explains the process of getting capital funds approved to purchase these properties. Right now, I believe we've closed on 3 of the 5 properties along Oxford Street. This standalone home is scheduled to be closed on at the end of this month. We've developed new site plans, which I'll share in a moment. So our new site plan expands the site, relocates the entrance driveway per traffic and mobility's recommendation. We're able to stretch out this upper parking lot. This provides better flow of traffic within the site. And with this additional space, we're able to add a basketball court, which is being removed in another area of South Norwalk. They're losing a basketball court. By including this, it puts one back into the community. Overall, this site plan provides more stacking, better interior circulation than previously proposed. And there's a slight increase in the number of parking spots, even though we took a few out in this corner. And just to mention, this lower corner of the site, what was done is we used to have more of a harder turn in this lower corner, but there are plans with traffic and mobility to improve this intersection. At this time, it's early in their design. They're unsure if it would be a rotary or a 4-way stop, but based on overlays and coordination with their department, we're providing enough space for them to do whatever it is they choose to do in this area. So by making this shift, moving the parking lot over, that provides more space for them to do this work, and it improves this area of the school. There's no changes to the building, the location. The construction of the building itself is underway, so the foundations went in as originally planned. But that's really sums up the changes to the plans. And since there's new limits to construction, we spoke to Brian Baker early on and wanted to make sure we brought this back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for approval so that there's no surprises later on.
Okay, are there any questions? Tammy, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Phillips. I'm sure TMP put the driveway in the right place, so I'm not really questioning the location, but is it right on the corner of the street? And will there be a stop sign as you come down the street from either direction? It seems, right on the bend seems like an odd spot to put.
Yeah, let me share that again, and we can zoom in on that corner. So there will be stop signs. There's an existing stop. We'd have a new stop here. I believe there was an existing stop sign, but this would also be, it would basically be a 4-way stop. And I know when this came up originally, typically you don't see a driveway or an intersection off the corner of a property. So, but based on the existing conditions, this does work for this site. They were happy with it this way.
Okay, if you're happy and they're happy, I'm happy. I just wanted to bring it up as something that looked a little odd to me. Thank you.
Other questions?
I have a quick question, I hope.
Go ahead,
I'm
Rick.
just curious. I have no problem with the application that's before us right now, but what happened with the 4 acres on the top of this property?
Yeah. The big solar field.
It was gonna be a
There-
solar field, then it couldn't be, then it was gonna possibly be something else when the properties were purchased. I'm just wondering what the end result was. But if that's not relevant, I'll withdraw the question.
We are still, there's still open conversations about putting solar up there. And right now, there's nothing in the plans, there's nothing in the original plans to develop up at the top of the site. I know there's concerns with leasing that space, the accessibility, the visibility from the street. Those concerns have been voiced by the police department that we've reviewed the plans with. So there's currently no plans at the top of the site. We do have a field up above the school, but not beyond that. And right now we're still working with SNU on what we can or can't do for solar on the site.
This was a cause for substantial discussion when we approved the project. Could you, just as a courtesy, when decision is made, let our staff know?
Absolutely. Yes, we will.
Okay, appreciate it.
And oh, sorry, I was just gonna add that there is that field that will be kind of halfway up. So there's still, going to use a lot of that space. It's the way up that we haven't determined.
And I was just gonna suggest, if it'll help you in your discussions with SNU, my budget pay with Eversource is $11.50 a month, so if they want to take me over, happy to join.
I know.
Oh, if I may.
Go ahead,
Mr.
Tammy.
I've been driving by the on Meadow Street quite a bit in the last couple of weeks, and the top of the hill is being lowered as they bring the soil down to raise the level of the bottom of the property. So it's not nearly as far away, if you will, as it used to be. And I don't know how much more earth they're going to bring down to fill up the lower level, but I would advocate that some type of greenery, trees, plantings, whatever, go up there, similar to, if you want to say, the little micro forest that they're doing at Meadow Garden, where that basketball court is being eliminated, and now you're bringing the basketball court over to the new school. Great, that's awesome. But take the opportunity to put some living material up there to cool the environment naturally, and it would be a benefit to everybody.
And-
Two-legged and four-legged and birds, winged creatures.
Yeah, and just to circle back to that comment quick, I think the area that you're seeing that they're developing up above is this field. That is the field that we're building. They're importing all the material that they're using to bring up the parking lot and in front of the building down below here is being imported. That needs to be, it's not just any fill, it's reviewed and approved for structure and other requirements. And
Okay,
up above
see.
this field, so this field is generally at the same elevation that it was when the property was purchased. And then up at the top of the site where we've discussed the possibility of solar, this does get topped with soil and then gets a meadow grass seed, and it grows naturally, so that there will be plantings and some work done up here, but there's no plans beyond that.
so what are those, right near where your cursor is, those long, thin rectangles? Yeah, what are those?
These were, it's an overlay of the old plan, the existing conditions that were up here. So these
Oh,
were,
okay.
whether they were greenhouses or different compartments for material, all of this got removed, cleaned up, and then topped with soil, which would be planted.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Steve, I've forgotten whether we actually have a written approval for this or if it just requires, here we go. Thank you, Brian. That's why I've forgotten. It's so short. Can I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I can make the
Move to
motion.
approve.
Two.
Right? Is that Hector?
Yes, there was
All right,
one.
Hector has moved approval. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Richard has seconded. Frankly, these are relatively minor changes. I think we can do this with just a show of hands. All those in favor of the resolution? I don't see any opposition. Is that correct? No opposition. Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item, again, because JJ has left, everyone is welcome to fully participate. This is a public hearing on 2024-42 Department of Public Works, Philo Street repaving a portion of Philo Street between Richards Avenue and West Norwalk Road, which is a designated scenic road. This is going to be a public hearing, so let me explain how we run the public hearings. I believe the Department of Public Works will give the presentation on the project, during which commission members are welcome to ask any questions they wish. When the presentation is completed, we will open the public hearing to the public. We ask anyone who wishes to speak to use the raise your hand icon at the bottom of your computer screen. Staff will explain that again, as well as how to access the hearing on your phone. We don't set a limit on how long you can speak, but we ask you to be as, in fairness to everyone involved, as brief as possible while making all the points that are important to you, because you only have one opportunity to speak. Also, ask that you be polite in your comments. This is not an interactive process, so you'll make your comments. The commission members will be listening closely. When everyone who wishes to speak has had an opportunity, Public Works or their consultants or their staff will have an opportunity to respond to what they've heard from the public, after which we will close the public hearing and move on to action. With that, I think I'll turn it over to the Director of Public Works.
Good evening, everybody. Can you guys hear me? I'm
Yeah.
a little bit under the weather, so actually I have the whole team here to present again what is the project. So I have Jimmy Ann, that is the principal engineer, and also Greg Pacelli from TMP, because we want to give again an overall about the project, and then we'll be around for any further questions. Jim, I'll let you run from here. Thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa. Mr. Schulman, yes, I have a plan over here. I will, if I can share the screen, hold on one second. I'll show you the layout of the plan. Oh, here we go. Okay, so as most of you know, every year we have our annual paving forecast. That all roads have to be maintained properly. There's a lot of preparation done for that, and this year, Philo Street happened to be on our paving list. There was anything substantial about it. It just deteriorated to the point that we do want to repair it and make it usable for the residents. Now, in that process, as you know, with the entire city procedure is to, along with paving, is also to try to make everything more accessible for multiple users, pedestrians as well as vehicular access. And as such, we have called out to put in some sidewalks and some pedestrian ramps in areas of existing footpaths. During the time of design, at the time, let's confess, we did not realize at first that it was a scenic road, which is why we're discussing this now. But I'll just go through the run through the entire scenario, basically starting on Philo Street from Princess Pine Road. You can see over here, this left column over here is basically where we're starting. There's a pedestrian ramp, as you call. I'm sorry. I just want to also add that the last meeting a month ago, when we brought this up, we were given permission, as you know, to install the pedestrian ramps. We've installed most of them, about 7 of them, but the others we are waiting to hear from the committee to see what the decision is about any type of work being done. So there is a ramp located at the intersection of Princess Pine and Philo. We're intending to pave around. It goes up around Philo, which then bends over around a 90-degree bend. Just going to adjust this to the next page. And as you can see over here, you're going to get to the other roads themselves. We've put in some pedestrian ramps. There's one over here that was not put in because that would be done by our paving contractor, simply because of the particular factors and structural aspects of this. We're not looking to basically adjust the road width. There are a few areas that the existing curb or edge of pavement may not be very straight, so we'll probably just straighten those out. But for the most part, the road width itself is not going to be adjusted. We're just simply going to put in crosswalks, particular sidewalks that are designated, make things a little more accessible as best as possible. The intersections are going to be, not so much in this area, are going to be not altered, but they would be adjusted slightly in order to bring it up to city standards. City standards are based themselves on particular state and federal, and just a desire to make things safer for pedestrians and vehicular access. So as we can see over here, we get around to Little Fox Lane, and then it stops over here by Bet Marley. Now from the first section over to there. Now from there, I'm going to share another screen. Hold on 1 second. Goes to Little Fox Lane and ends around into over by the other section of Bet Marley, which, as you know, is a sort of a U-shaped cul-de-sac, which ends up in both areas. So a cul-de-sac like that, there's no, again, for the most part, everything is basically staying the same. At Bet Marley over there, we're not altering the intersection there, but it's being adjusted again for pedestrian safety. But I'll let Greg Pacelli from TMP give us more specifics about that. So this is what we are looking to do. We're hoping to be able to get this completed so we can continue with our paving forecast. But everything else is just basically within the realm of our paving program, which we do every year.
Jim,
Yes.
Am I correct that our staff has shared with you the letters we've received regarding this project?
Yes, I have gotten some, I've gotten some myself.
I'm
did you
just wondering if you might address those.
Okay, well, by any chance, I didn't get all the letters myself. They went to the other members of my staff, but do you by any chance know which particular ones you're talking? There was a concern over here. There was a concern brought up last time by a member of the committee, as I recall, talking about the fact that there were narrow sidewalks in the area, which is one of the reasons why it has come up to there. Now, as you know, we tend to bring things up to a standard, which by ADA standards is at least 4 feet, but preferably 5. Now, the areas over here by Princess Pine, there is a footpath over here. Right now, we are calling out to just basically leave that in place for the existing width. And the reason for that is because there is a wall over there, stone wall, and it appears based on our survey that it is encroaching into the city right away. And as such, we can have it removed. We can to make a proper sidewalk in there. But as that would be considered an alteration, we don't want to do that, obviously, without your approval. That's why it was left in as is. So basically, that's been a good part of the concerns for many of the people. Without alteration, we did have a resident who did ask about the area over here by, I believe that's Little Fox Lane. Let me just confirm that. Yes, by Little Fox Lane, where you see what's called a mid-block crossing right over here. I'll zoom into that area a little bit more over here. That was a concern why it was being put over there. The reason for that was because we were attempting to have a crosswalk to cross people over at Philo at that intersection of Little Fox Lane. But because of the bend around there, it was actually dangerous to put an intersection, a crosswalk at that location. You have to follow federal highway guidelines in order to put crosswalks. Legally speaking, a person can cross anywhere at any intersection, but that doesn't mean you put a crosswalk there. You only put a crosswalk in if you're establishing that it is safe. And at Little Fox Lane, crossing over Philo, it was not safe, so we moved over into a mid-block crossing at that location in order to increase what's called stopping sight distance. You can see over here, there's a note saying minimum of 200 feet stopping sight distance. That way, a car going around the bend of Philo in that direction is more likely to see a pedestrian when he's farther away like that, and is able to stop. There are guidelines by Federal Highway Association that establishes these.
Thank you.
Mr. Schulman, if I may just step in real quick and just build upon what Jim was talking about. So like we do at many paving projects, sidewalk projects, TMP and DPW work closely and coordinate on these plans as part of upcoming paving. And as part of this, TMP and DPW, we've made a lot of investments in the area around the Fox Run School. Last year we did the sidewalks along the frontage of Fox Run School. And then later this year, we're going to be continuing the sidewalks up Fox Run, as well as doing a connected path behind the school, to correct that. And then also, if you go, Jim, if you're able to go to the TMP plan as well.
Yes. Hold on 1 second.
Thank you. These improvements as well was to add an additional sidewalk on the other side of Philo Street as well, just to increase connectivity to the area. In coordination with the school, the Department of Transportation, and the city, we performed a roadway safety audit, a walk audit with the school, to where DOT came in, brought their Safe Routes to School team, which is a statewide program that they run, where they go to schools and work with the community and work with the city to improve the conditions around the school. Now, for all of us, we all know in Norwalk, K to 3, if you live within a mile, the parent is responsible for their own transportation. The student has to find transportation to work to school because they don't have a bus. Grades 4 through 8, they have to walk. It's 1.5 miles distance. So all around the city, we're incorporating sidewalks, especially around schools, to increase walkability and provide other mobility options other than having a parent drop their kid off. And based on the survey that was collected as part of the safety audit that was collected, a lot of parents and school staff and even the students are saying they don't feel safe walking to school because of the lack of sidewalk infrastructure around the area. So with the previous projects that were done last year, the investments that are being made this year, the investments that are coming on Richards Avenue as well, which DPW is going to be incorporating sidewalks on Richards Avenue. We wanted to incorporate now the west approach onto Philo Street and build up that sidewalk area as well, and also address some of the customer service complaints that we've gotten, especially coming out of Little Fox Lane. You know, a lot of speeding issues, visibility issues, you know, having trouble turning out of Little Fox Lane. So trying to reduce vehicle speed and also increase connectivity through the area for students and pedestrians alike. You know, at Marley, you see the offset intersection where it was wide open, you know, not a traditional intersection. So we worked to tee that intersection up to better align with the curb lines on the other side of Philo Street across Richards Avenue, and just tighten up the intersection. During the walk audit, we received a lot of complaints from students, even the parents as well, about crossing that. Even if it's a stop control intersection, their kids are having trouble crossing the road because it's such a long crossing. They actually have flags that are out there so that when students cross, they could hold the flag so that cars don't run the stop sign and don't hit them. We're also looking to incorporate thermoplastic crosswalk, which is more high visibility, anti-slip resistant as well, just to provide a different texture and a different texture on the pavement so that it really sticks out for vehicles and pedestrians alike. Also through here, we're going to be incorporating a concrete curb. Concrete curb, especially in this road, very vital. We're doing this throughout the city where concrete curbs have now become the standard. You see, you know, the S curve that Philo Street has, very confusing to understand late at night, dark. You know, there's a shimmer on the ground where the pavement and the sidewalk begins, where if it's all bituminous. With the concrete curb, it will define the edge of the road, which will be much easier for vehicles to see where the edge of the road is located. And with that, that's, you know, we want to build up this area and want to build up areas all around the city. Highland Avenue, we did sidewalks. We did the same thing. We did, you know, there's 3 schools on that corridor. You know, we put concrete curbs in. We're making investments throughout the city around schools and incorporating concrete curb and increasing the sidewalks approaching. You know, this is also part of the city's ongoing effort for complete streets legislation and Vision Zero as well, which is all defined within the POCD. And we're, you know, incorporating these as part of the Complete Streets program. And this is going to be part of all the streets that are upcoming. And we're going to follow those guidelines as part of the Complete Streets legislation moving forward. So we've worked a lot on this over the winter time to incorporate these changes. And we hope you consider these for this upcoming paving project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, anything else?
Not at this time, unless anybody has specific questions.
All right, questions from the commissioners?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure, Galen, go ahead.
Oh, you can hear me? Good.
Yes.
You're not going to make Philo Street narrower at any point, are you? It's very narrow as it is, very difficult to get, you know, a normal sized car and a truck going opposite directions.
No, the intention is not to either widen or narrow the roadway itself. In fact, the pedestrian ramps are already, for most of them, not in the area that you see over here, but in the other areas are already installed as per our last meeting, and they are basically at the same location. So no, there's no intentions to actually adjust the curb width itself. The only issue maybe if like I said before, if an edge of pavement happens to be crooked or something there, we tend to straighten those out, but that's not really an adjustment. That's just something that we do to follow through to make it smooth. But no, to answer your question, we have no intentions to narrow the general road width anywhere.
Actually, Jim, if you could just hop back to the TMP plan, there is just a small section where we are narrowing the road. The existing roadway in this spot, this is between Bart Maley and Little Fox Lane. You see on the southerly curb line, the red line there, that's the existing edge of road. You know, we got a lot of complaints, customer service complaints about speeding through here and the visibility coming out of Little Fox Lane. So all our intention here was to narrow the one side of the road, which allows us to get a sidewalk in. But it's still 26 feet wide, which is more than wide enough and still wider than it is going westerly towards Princess Pine. But this allows, us to slow traffic and also incorporate a sidewalk along that westerly curb line and just normalize this section of the road, because it does go from, over, it's over 40 feet today, closer to Richards Avenue. And then as you go to Little Fox Lane, it goes all the way to 23 feet. So it's a pretty significant necking in and over a short distance. So we're just trying to close that in a little bit sooner to provide, so it's not so wide coming into this portion of Phillips Street.
Yeah, and to add to Greg's, I should clarify also that as I said before, the intersections themselves are not, well, they're not being altered, they're being adjusted, basically. That's basically what the intention is over to here, to Greg's point, that the intersection itself, because that wraps around a bend, that particular location, as it goes over to Richards Avenue around there. So while it does that, that area particular itself, the functionality, it's not being altered because the functionality of the intersection is still the same. That's as speaking engineering terms, but everything else, though, to Greg's point, is what appears to be a bump out is just simply an alteration of, adjustment of the intersection itself, and not the entire general speaking of the roadway width itself. But I'll be clear about that, though. Yes.
Any other questions before we open it up to the public?
Chairman Schulman, could I just share the ordinance and sort of like why this is coming before the Planning and Zoning Commission, and kind of what you're sort of charged with looking at?
Sure, Brian, go ahead.
All right, because I think it'll help answer some questions too. So if you can see here, B is where sort of what we're supposed to be looking for, which are alterations or improvements to a scenic road, and it kind of encapsulates what is considered an alteration or an improvement. So things such as reconstruction of a scenic road within a right of way, widening of the right of way or of the traveled portion of the scenic road, paving, changes of grade, straightening, removal of stone walls and or mature trees, but exclude routine maintenance. So I believe, as far as what Jim had said, was there was some straightening of the road and the repaving, but there's, as far as I know, there's no proposal to remove any stone walls or any mature trees, or kind of what I would think are more make the road more scenic than essentially the sidewalk improvements.
Well, just to clarify, we're not straight. The road is already straight. We're not adjusting the road, straightening that over there. What might be straightened would be edge of pavements area. So, I mean, the road itself is still traveled. There's still tension over there. That's not changing. The direction that people drive is still changing. The edge of pavement might be cut off in certain areas. We just, that tends to be, that's not good. In engineering terms, that's not considered to be the road itself. The edge of pavement itself, where it meets the grass or asphalt curb. That's considered roadside, but yes.
Thank you, Brian. Again, any other questions before we open it up to the public?
Yeah, just a quick question, Mr. Schulman.
Sure.
Is the Philo Street, continues on by Weed Street and goes down to Princess Pine, etc. Is the plan to redo that as well, or does it just stop where what you've done already?
In terms of paving limits?
No, sidewalk improvements or footpath improvements, whatever you want.
Oh,
I can
well,
answer
no.
that one, Jim. Tammy, the plan that we have now is that aligned to the complete streets that we are trying to implement. All the time that we are paving a road now, we're gonna always look into it if we can add or improve pedestrian mobility to it, and also make sure that it is good for ADA accessibility. So that's how we're moving on to all the roads that we're gonna pave from now on. Some of those roads in that area were paved already last year. So Princess Pine is one of those that got paved already.
Okay, thank you.
Do you mind reading some of these engineering slides? Is a little tricky. Would you mind just pulling up like a Google Maps and showing the area, just the entire area that's proposed to be changed right now, like where that starts and stops, so we can see it in one picture?
Hold
Or-
on 1 second, so I'll show you the location.
Just as a question while you're doing that, Mr. Meehan and Ms. Valadares, do you know if there are more children coming from the Princess Pine area or further up Ponus? Like, where does the school draw and where are you trying to get more kids walking? Because right now, if you just go to Littlebrook or Weed, I wouldn't even think that's a 1/10 of a mile away from the school. I know you have to start somewhere, obviously, but I'm just curious where these kids are going to be coming from.
I'll have to relay that for Greg to answer because he was the one that did this tour that I wasn't part of it.
Okay, thank you.
So within the designation that Norwalk has, anybody within a mile has to walk. So we didn't get specific numbers as far as how many were coming from each direction. But anyone within that walk shed area has to find their own form of transportation. So we're trying to build up the sidewalk network as much as possible around the schools. We'd hate to do everything on Richards, do the sidewalks all on Philo Street heading east, and then leave everything west bare with no sidewalk accessibility through here. We do have requests that come in for sidewalks. We have requests come in for sidewalks on Weed Avenue. So we do have those requests come in for sidewalks through this area, even if just not for students, but also just general pedestrians as well through the area.
Yeah, I'm all in favor of sidewalks, but a mile radius around the school is actually pretty far, isn't it? Can you show us what that radius is?
Yeah, I think Jim can. So also the radius that's defined, and this is coming from Joanna Zensvetter, who's the board of the school transportation specialist. It's actually based upon the roadway network, so it's not a perfect mile circle around the school. It's based on the roadway network and the shortest distance from the student's house, and that's how the buses are determined.
Okay. All right, so as stated before, so this is the area, the paving itself is going on Philo from West Norwalk all the way to Richards. The sidewalk network, for lack of a better term now, will just be starting from Princess Pine up through around there up to Richards itself.
Actually, Jim, if I may, sorry to not
Sure,
to correct
no,
you,
no.
but the paving's actually going up to Fox Run Road.
Well, I'm just over for this section.
Oh, for this, okay. I just wanted to look at it from a grander scale with the improvements that are being made, even beyond just the scenic roadway itself.
Sorry, it keeps moving. Can you just draw? And if you have this already in the deck somewhere where it's just one picture showing the entire area that we're talking about.
Jim, just zoom out a little bit and then I think that will be easier for them to see.
So, okay, here, again, here's Philo Street following the paving itself, West Norwalk rides around here. Here's where the sidewalk network begins, coming around and going in continuously, and then to Greg's point, up to Fox Run up here.
And the part where we have to assess and vote on whether there's a
That's
problem
from
with it being scenic.
Princess Pine, I believe, up to
sidewalk.
Richards, yes.
Princess Pine to Richards is the
Yes.
part that we're voting on. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. And that's the part that we have any say over.
Yes,
If
that's
people
correct.
are concerned about the other parts, that's not our,
We reach out to
purview.
Public Works or TP,
Sure.
but we're happy to address.
Okay,
any
Princess
Yes,
Pines,
and the
which
only
thank
reason
you.
was because that part of the road is considered scenic. We believe that this is the first scenic road that we had, so that's why we're here.
Thank
We
you.
are, and as Brian put it up on the screen when we read the ordinance, we do believe that the only thing that is bringing us in front of you is really because we are paving. And although we did have some questions about it, because on that paragraph at the same time say that maintenance is excused from it, and we see paving also as maintenance. But that's why we're here. You know, we don't want to, as you guys know, we like to do everything by the book. We want to be very transparent. We want the residents to understand exactly what is being proposed, and that's why we're here. And we're happy to answer any more questions.
Do any stone walls have to be adjusted because of this?
No, we're not. We don't intend to take out any structures. That's as part of this.
Anything else before we open it up to the public? All right, if not, either Steve or Brian, you want to explain how people can come on and comment?
Sure. Anyone from the public, if you'd like to speak, you could use the raise your hand tool. You click that once. Or if you're dialing on a phone, you would hit *9. First, we have Kevin Huffman.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. And I actually appreciate everything that you guys have been doing. I know it's a lot of hard work and, you know, it's also very complex. I've lived in this neighborhood for 25 years. I live between Princess Pine and Geneva Road, which
Mr.
is,
Huffman, excuse
yes.
me. Can you just give us your address, please?
I live at 286 Philo Street.
Thank you.
I'm sorry about that. So actually, I just in listening, I guess we are outside of the sidewalk area. I've lived in this area for 25 years, and that stretch between Princess Pine and Geneva Road has no sidewalks whatsoever. I've been unable to walk my kids to school. They're grown up now. They also could not go Halloween trick-or-treating in this neighborhood because it's just too dangerous. Even just generally taking a walk in our neighborhood, you take your life in your hands. So I appreciate that you are putting in sidewalks. I think that this particular spot where I live has no sidewalks and is extremely dangerous. My property, you know, I've talked to somebody about this. There looks like there used to be a footpath in front of my property. It's overgrown. And then I asked, you know, what would happen if the city could put a sidewalk in there? It is city property. They said to me that I would have to pay for this on my own, which I'm certainly not going to do. But I do find that there are older people, younger people walking down that street between Geneva Road and Princess Pine with no sidewalk at all. They are literally taking their lives in their hands. So I would think it would be really great if in the future you could extend the sidewalk between Princess Pine and Geneva even further to accommodate us. And so, or if, you know, I'm willing to give up the front of my property to turn it into a sidewalk. I think it would be very helpful for this community. The community really needs it. You know, I also find it a little crazy that you guys did all the curb work and widening on Princess Pine and Old Rock Lane and did not put in a single sidewalk. You spent all of that money and did not put in a single sidewalk into the neighborhood. So anyway, I think that's, you know, my major concern, you know, is that having lived here for so long, I know what happens in front of my house. I see people dodging the cars that are racing down that road. And if there's any way to extend the work between Princess Pine and Geneva Road, I'd very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next we have, it's DCM.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My first time talking to all of you, so I apologize if there are any committee faux pas on my part. My name is David Christopher Morris. I'm at 2 Princess Pine Road, right on the corner with Philo. Just a couple of points. I'll try and be really quick. I appreciate you're not taking any of the stone walls down, but the comment made about the stone wall contradicts a survey that my wife and I had done when we purchased the property that actually has a survey pin in the sidewalk. So I'd like to mention that I understand you're not doing anything with the walls, but there appears to be a difference between what the surveyor did and he found the pins that were already in place and what is believed by maybe parts of Norwalk. So I just want to raise that. The new ramp, just to call one thing, so the road has been narrowed at that junction of Princess Pines, although it has been stated that the roads weren't narrowed. Philo may not have been, but that one part where the ramp was put in on the corner of Philo of Princess Pine has reduced the width of Princess Pine. So I also want to make sure that everyone's clear on that. And I think my understanding is that, and some of this happened while my wife and I were on vacation, so we're kind of playing catch up a little bit. The concrete curbs that I think you guys are talking about putting in, there are parts of Philo, and somebody's already raised it, that is very narrow. Even now, there are parts of Philo where people need to mount curbs in order to pass each other, particularly if they're larger vehicles. That's going to be more problematic if all the curbs are concrete. So I just call that out because I think some of them are only sort of 1 inch, and they're asphalt right now. They're only 1.5 inches and they're slanted. So it's very easy for somebody to, and I'm not a favor of people driving on sidewalks, obviously, but if they're large trucks like school buses or garbage trucks, them passing in the narrow places and there's a 6-inch high curb or a 4-inch high curb, and could cause some problems. So I'd like to raise that. And then as a very subjective comment, the way that it's been done on the corner of Philo and Princess Pine, I think is a little bit dangerous. If you guys take a look at what's been done there, and I understand the rationale for it, the way that people have to approach that and then go around it, if you've got a large semi or even a larger truck that needs to swing around, they're going to be cutting corners and it's going to be swiping people off the sidewalk. So I invite you to come and take a look at that one. That's all I had, and I apologize if that was too long. I tried to keep it brief. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have Rich Roller.
Mr. Roller, you're muted.
Okay. Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I didn't know I was using the hand properly, and so I started to make a call into the teleconferencing system. So now I'm switching phones. Okay, so I had prepared some. Oh, I'm Rich Roller, and I live at 272 Philo Street, which is between Princess Pine and Weed, in the same vicinity that David was just talking about. And I want to just say, so, well, I want to say one thing that came up before. Jim Meehan said that he thought that the scenic road went from Richards to only to Princess Pine. I believe it goes all the way to West Norwalk Road. And when I've been here 26 years, and when the scenic road designation was signed by the mayor and a guy named Tom Aikenhead who pushed it through, it was done in that section where the waterfall is and the bridge, which is between Princess Pine and West Norwalk Road. So my belief is that the scenic road goes all the way from Richards to West Norwalk Road. So I will continue. I had written up some things before, so I'm going to read through them. I also had sent in some written comments by way of an email to Steve Kleppen, which you may or may not have seen, so I'll cover some of the points. I'll try to be brief. The hearing obviously is because Philo is a scenic road. There's probably multiple reasons that was done. I've heard some of them. One thing I want to highlight is that this stretch of the road and this part of town is very non-urban. It's distinctly semi-rural, I would say. And to my way of thinking, that defines its scenic character. And that's partly why it's a scenic road. A couple of comments about, the past. I have worked successfully with DPW a few times since that scenic road ordinance was applied to Philo, including the last reconstruction was done in 2004. And I found them to be pretty cooperative back then and respectful of residents and respectful of the scenic road ordinance and the requirements. I'm not so clear on this project this year, showing the same level of cooperation and respect. Try not to be harsh on that one, but that's just my perception. I first learned of this project randomly talking to Jim Travers from TMP. That was in June. I contacted the Department of Public Works, notified them of the scenic road situation, and I was told this was a replace in kind project. And as far as I can tell, it is partly a replace in kind project. It's they're going to try not to change the road width, although there's been some discussion of how that's being done. I would say that the road being narrowed at that S curve that Greg was talking about concerns me. I didn't know about that until just now. But some other things they're trying to preserve are the asphalt footpaths that we have that predominate in this whole area. But the curbing, and that's really what I wrote in about primarily, the curbing is proposed to be concrete, and it's taller and it's fairly bright white. And that is my main concern and my objective for this hearing that I'm giving testimony for. That ordinance says, we didn't get a chance to look at it too much, but it says things like any reconstruction, it defines reconstruction, which is what we're doing here. Quote, any reconstruction, let's see, what does it say? It says scenic road, it defines a scenic road, and thus any reconstruction should, quote, blend into surrounding terrain and, quote, preserve to the highest degree possible or minimize any adverse impacts to the scenic character of the road. The proposed concrete curbing goes against those stipulations and would very much adversely impact the semi-rural character of the road in this area. Concrete is suitable for more urban zones, and there's another ordinance on the books for Norwalk, Chapter 95, and it kind of says that. It's a chapter about construction standards, and it basically says concrete is the suitable material for urban zones. So it kind of almost equates them, and that's how I think about it. I would say truly in kind reconstruction would use asphalt curbing, not concrete. Asphalt curbing of the same style and size that we've had for 20 years. It's held up very well. It works well for pedestrians. As David was talking about the mounting up down onto curbs, at the way the curbs are now, it would work with the 5 to 6 inch curbs of the concrete variety that we've seen in nearby roads. That would be very difficult. And the asphalt curb also blends in, as the scenic road charter or ordinance mentions, and it preserves the scenic character as that same ordinance describes. In fact, in a discussion I had with Vanessa, I'm sorry to spring this on you, Vanessa, but you said that you admitted that you preferred asphalt over concrete for curbing. So curbing is my main precise concern tonight. But secondarily, there is another related factor. DPW had done these prior designs and set their schedule before they knew of the scenic road issue. And I don't get a sense that they've reflected on or adjusted their designs based on that knowledge or their schedule. Myself and many neighbors I've spoken with don't quite feel that there's such an urgency to repave Philo. It's really not in that bad shape. But if the town deems it necessary to repave it this year or next, we think it should be done with the appropriate care, thought, planning and respect for the residents and the ordinance, and not rushed through without those things. That ordinance, chapter 101, goes into detail about the approval process. It mentions the public hearings, actually mentions more than one public hearing, which is a little confusing, but it mentions reviews by the Planning Commission, the Common Council, and the mayor. And it mentions planning documents and maps that should be initially submitted to the commission. I'm not quite sure that all that has happened. So my request to the commission and to the DPW is to take a beat and respect the concerns of the people and the ordinance and rethink this project a little bit. And then I would like to say one last thing, or maybe a couple of last things. I've spoken mostly about the curbing. That's been my main issue. And I've heard from other neighbors who feel similarly about preferring to retain the style of the asphalt curbing that we have now. But there's some other concerns, some of which are safety oriented. And if the other neighbors haven't shared or don't share those with you, I'm happy to share them. They've explained them to me. They told me it was okay for, I have permission to share their names and addresses if you guys want to hear that. Another key point, which has not really been said tonight, is that the footpath on this part of Philo Street is only 2 to 3 feet wide in many spots. And that is dictated by the road's narrowness. So that, plus some of the obstructions like trees and mailboxes, make that footpath non-compliant for ADA from my understanding. I'm not an expert in that field, but it's 2 to 3 feet wide. It's nowhere near the 4 to 5 feet I've heard that is the standard for ADA. So the ADA ramps that lead to non-ADA footpaths, personally, I would think that should be added to the list of things that should be thought through a little better. And I just recently saw that drawing that Jim highlighted. It's a TMP drawing, I guess. And it calls for those 2 new concrete sidewalks between Richards and Little Fox. And that was what Jim and Greg were discussing. That was news to me until just today, this afternoon, when I noticed the link. There used to be one asphalt footpath there now, one black asphalt footpath. Apparently that plan calls for 2 sidewalks on either side, and those sidewalks appear to be concrete, not asphalt. So if they're concrete, I don't know if they're going to be white, bright concrete. Greg talked about having high visibility, but that also would, I think, go against the scenic character of this road. And then the last thing I want to say, and thank you for your patience, is I've talked to a bunch of people about the intersection of Princess Pine and what has been done there with the ramp. Every single person thinks it's misguided and dangerous. I had one of my neighbors actually have a little accident with the new curb. So those are my comments, concerns, and requests. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you take it to heart. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Next is David Davidson.
This is Dave Davidson, 16 Betmalia Road. I am speaking in support of the proposed adjustments that were discussed this evening. I fully support the installation of the new crossing on Philo Street between Little Fox Lane and Betmalia Road. This will be a life-preserving action for those wanting to cross Philo Street at the current forced crossing point where the sidewalks end on both sides of Philo, and there is no visibility to oncoming traffic. I think that's a step in the right direction, and I give support and credibility to both the travel people, the transit people, and the Department of Public Works for taking this action. Also, and I'm not sure whether this is in the plan or not, because I couldn't tell from the plans that I saw, I would urge that the sidewalk on the south side of Philo Street be extended the short distance to Betmalia Road to permit those not wanting to cross Philo to continue to the north end of Betmalia Road without being required to cross Philo Street and then back again. I think I believe I was cut off, but the last point I was trying to make is the path stops at Little Fox Lane on each side of Philo Street. I urge you to extend on the south side of Philo Street a short distance up further on Philo Street to the northern end of Betmalia Road. So those who walk or transit on Philo Street aren't required to cross the street, go to the top of the hill, and then cross back to get back to Betmalia Road. Those are the two comments, but I think the action around Little Fox Lane is wonderful, and I believe will save lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Steve's fault. Next is Anthony Conti.
Mr. Conti, you're muted.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
My name's Anthony Conti. My wife and I live at 25 Betmarley Road. It's on the S curve. We're in favor of everything you guys want to do, but the curve is very dangerous if you're exiting our driveway or our neighbor's driveway, which is adjacent to ours, closer to Little Fox. Cars come flying around that curve. There's no sight line, and I understand you guys are going to narrow the route, which makes it worse. The reason it makes it worse, I believe, is when you exit our driveway towards Fox Run Tool, there's a catch basin directly adjacent to the driveway. To miss the catch basin, we have to cross the double yellow line on the north side into oncoming traffic. It's a matter of time before there's an accident of somebody coming out of our driveway or our neighbor's driveway. And I really think that sight line coming from the west side from Weed has to be improved. I know there's a lot of arborvitaes there. They are the neighbors. If we take care of cutting them down, will the city replant smaller ones? I do understand there's a sidewalk going on the south side. I had gotten an email from Drew Berndemeyer, I believe, that they were probably going to push the curb line out into the road further. My concern is that we need that catch. And I spoke to Berndemeyer and I spoke to Christina down there, and they said they're going to move that catch base, look into moving the catch basin up the street so that we can not hit it when we pull out of our driveway. I would urge any one of you to please come over, turn into our driveway and try to exit, because it's impossible. And you have to open your windows and turn the radio off so you don't get hit. And that's my concern.
Thank you.
Next we have just says Brian.
Hi, my name is Brian Fleming. I live at 46 Princess Pine Road. I have a couple of comments. Most of them I agree with what David and Richard said earlier. The first comment I want to talk about is the ramp that was placed on Princess Pine Road in Philo. It narrows the road at the end of Princess Pine. It juts out. I haven't measured, but it's probably a few feet. And I agree with what Rich said, that it's misguided, and I would love if that could be reconsidered for a correction. My second point is the cement curbs. The cement curbs in this area, I do not believe fit. We live in a beautiful rural neighborhood. These curbs look like they're more for a city cement sidewalk, not fitting for this area. I prefer, and I believe that the asphalt curbs with the slant on them that are lower are more forgiving, just in case you're riding your bike and you have to jump onto a curb, or if a car is coming down the road, it's very dangerous. You will hit that curb, and it's very, very dangerous. I appreciate everything that the city of Norwalk is doing for the area. Those are my two comments, is the ramp at Princess Pine and Philo. If someone could take a look at that. I'm not sure why it was done like that, but it's definitely a hazard. And the white cement curbs, I do not believe fit in this area. If you look at Old Rock Road with the cement curbs, it feels like the road has narrowed and it becomes very dangerous to drive on. Thank you for your consideration, and thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Chris Jones.
How's it going? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
How's it going? My name is Chris Jones. I live on 249 Philo Street. We are, I guess, the second home on the inside of that S curve as well. My neighbor Anthony was just on here a moment ago talking. I want to say I definitely agree with the plan. I believe it was Greg who was talking about it before, about the double sidewalks. If that is not approved, I hope it is, because I definitely think that would be a huge help. A lot of cars absolutely fly around that corner. So even if you have a crosswalk, well, a bit after that curve, I've seen cars come down, doing easy 60, 65 miles an hour, racing, whatever they're doing. It's still tough to see coming around that corner, no matter how far you're, out of the way. So if that isn't approved, I think that'd be a great addition and make it a lot safer. I guess I have two more questions. One that my neighbor had talked on 2 moments ago was cutting the trees back a bit. I'm not sure exactly if all those trees or some of those trees are on our property alone. If the town is able to cut some back, if we have to do that, if they can possibly replant as well, or if that's something that we need to do ourselves. And then the second thing would be, I know I've heard that this is probably not possible, but if there's an option for a stop sign at the corner of Little Fox and Philo Street, I know that there is probably a lot more car traffic than most people realize there. Everyone uses that street to go around the school when school is in session, even when it's not in session, and then especially if there's an event up at the event space that's right up the way. I apologize, I'm forgetting the name of it right now. A lot of cars can come through there, and we've had some days where it's just nonstop cars honking at each other, trying to pull out, cutting in front of each other. So even pulling it on that side of the street is not something easily done. So I guess those are my two concerns. And thank you guys for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, we have Peter.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, Peter Bondi, I live at 15 Princess Pine Road. I just have I agree with David and Rich. I also agree with the gentleman who just spoke, but as far as around that curve at on Philo Street and where Bet Marley is, I don't think you made the crosswalk far enough down because of the people that come around that curve at 60 miles an hour. They're still not going to see somebody crossing at that crosswalk. So that's one thing. The second thing is, and this is my biggest pet peeve, is the handicap ramp at the corner of Princess Pine Road going to a sidewalk that's not handicap compliant. My mother was in a wheelchair for years, and I know the obstacles she came up on. And if somebody's going to use a handicap ramp to nowhere, that makes no sense whatsoever. So my proposal is to eliminate that handicap ramp if you're not going to make the sidewalk compliant to a wheelchair. It makes no sense. And even if a kid wanted to go to school and he had to use a wheelchair or some other form of mobility apparatus, there's no way they can get down that sidewalk. And if they get caught up against an obstacle, they can't get off the sidewalk because now your curbs are too high. So you really need to rethink that whole plan as far as ADA compliance. And also that the street in that area is probably only 19 feet wide. So I don't think you're going to be able to ever make those sidewalks ADA compliant without taking stone walls down, moving telephone poles, trees, mailboxes, etc. And that's really all I have.
Thank you.
If anyone else would like to speak, you can use the raise your hand tool, or you could hit *9 if you're dialed in on the cell phone. Next, we have Steve Weisheight.
You're muted.
Okay. Steve Whiteside, 308 Philo Street. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the sidewalks are all gonna stop, at Princess Pine. Is there any sidewalks in the proposal to come toward West Norwalk Road? And the curbing in between, is that gonna be concrete or proposed or same as asphalt, the way it is now? That's all I got. I just had those two questions.
Okay, questions will be answered when we turn it back to DPW.
And if anyone else who hasn't spoken yet would like to speak, use the raise your hand tool or hit *9. That appears to be it, Mr. Schulman.
Okay, then we will close out the public comment period of the hearing, and we'll turn it back to DPW for comment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Schuman and board members. First, I want to just address some of the general questions that came up, and then I'm going to pass back to Jim and Greg so they can go more to the specifics. So one thing that I want to emphasize is that one of the big things that visually that they definitely going to see that they are concerned is about the concrete curb that we are proposing instead of the asphalt curb. One of the reasons why we're doing that is that actually now this is the new standard that we are using in the city. We do not do anymore a difference between what we call an urban area or a rural area. Based on studies throughout the country, actually the difference of the concrete curb make the pedestrian safer. So when you're driving on those roads during the winter at night, you can definitely see the curb. And as one of the residents mentioned, he said that when there is the asphalt curb, it's easier to go over it with a bicycle. If it is easier to go over with a bicycle, it's even much easier to go over with a car. So a car in a high speed ended up going over the asphalt curb and ended up hitting the pedestrian. So it's just based on the studies that has been published that we change our standard, and now we are really installing concrete curb with asphalt sidewalk. So that's why I want to emphasize that. Also, that has, even if gives you the impression that the road is narrow, narrowing the road is a way to minimize the speed without adding other features. So sometimes what we have been doing is that we are redoing the travel lane, make it more narrow. This way, automatically, the cars start traveling in a lower speed. In regards to, so in other words, remember, if it's a narrow lane, it's always safer. In regards to the catch basin that was mentioned in one of the streets, we can definitely look at it all the time before we do any paving project. We also look at the drainage, so all the aspects of the drainage of the roads will also be assessed and fixed prior to paving. In regards to trees, if there is an issue with the sideline and the trees are in private property, the homeowner will receive a letter saying that he is supposed to take care of it. If a tree is on the right of way, Public Works will go there and trim those trees as well. In regards to the questions related to the ADA ramps that is going to attach to footpath, unfortunately, we do have that scenario throughout the city. This has been an old community that footpath was being built, and Ms. Langelis is here to make sure that she is the one that can always witness that, because in Rowayton we have a lot of those. Usually in the past was kind of footpath became where people try to find their way to walk through, eventually got asphalt on. And we have, as part of our ordinance, really a separation between what we consider a footpath and what we consider a sidewalk. So footpath is really what we cannot bring to ADA standards. And as part of our ordinance, allow us to keep like that. And why we cannot keep bring back to ADA standards? Sometimes it's because we do not have the right of way. So it's always for a physical part that we cannot change. So sometimes can be the slope, sometimes it's the width, sometimes we are in private property that we do not have an easement to do. Although it is not ideal, and we all agree with that, to have an ADA ramp that will end up being connected to a footpath, we still believe that it's safer that way than to not even have an ADA ramp. An ADA ramp, a lot of times also provides as a rescue safety for people on a wheelchair or on a stroller. So sometimes we're in an intersection and you want to cross, but there is a lot of traffic and they are not seeing you, or you're almost in the middle of the road. If you have an ADA ramp installed there, you can go up to the ramp and wait and look and then make the cross into that road. So that's also based on a lot of national studies, is why we have been installing ADA ramps, even though we may not be connecting to ADA sidewalks. But the rule is that all the time that we can upgrade a sidewalk to ADA standards, we are doing. And the last thing that I want to also address was that I heard that there was not much cooperation lately with DPW and one of the residents, and unfortunately, I feel bad that he feels like that. We gave a lot of attention to him. I meet with him myself, with Greg, and a lot of more people in our team for some time, and I have also individuals talk to him throughout the last few months. But again, and that's why we are here, is because we are really trying to make this in a way that is safe and is good for the whole community. And when we do a project, we don't do a project based on the street only that we're attending, but through the community that lives in that area. I think that if there is any other specific questions that maybe Greg or Jim needs to address, or if anybody else has any more specific questions that I miss, we are happy to answer. Greg?
Yeah, so Vanessa, thank you so much for articulating that so well. Just to build upon a couple things, as far as the material, I know the concrete curb was a discussion point. Just as Vanessa alluded to, in this area especially, there's not a lot of overhead lighting. It's very dark at nighttime. If you have an asphalt road with an asphalt curb and an asphalt sidewalk, it's very hard to determine where the edge of the road is. And more times than not, people will veer off to the side thinking that it's roadway and they go up on the sidewalk. So that's why we look to install concrete curb, so it defines the edge of the road. Secondly, resident alluded to that we are installing a concrete sidewalk between Richards and Little Fox. It's going to be an asphalt sidewalk, so it will tie into the same materials that are along the rest of the corridor. It's not going to be concrete sidewalk. Secondly, the 26-foot roadway width that we're proposing between Little Fox and Richards, today it's about 31 feet. So we're narrowing it to 26, which is still plenty of room. We've run various turning templates through here, passing school buses together. 26 feet is more than enough. A vehicle is only 6.5, 7.5 feet wide. Bus is only 8 to 9 feet tops. Plenty of room for two buses to pass each other. We're installing 10-foot lanes throughout the city on various roadways, and we've had no issues. And we have seen lower speeds with the narrower travel lanes. So 26 feet is significantly enough. As far as, us not cooperating or, being respectable to the residents, I think we are being respectable. We went through this walk audit with the school. We had parents, students, staff members telling us that it's dangerous for them to walk to school and they don't feel safe. And we are being respectable and installing these upgrades to the pedestrian network to provide access for all modes of transportation and not just for vehicles, and building a safe network and building something that is not standard and not safe to the community. So we are being respectful to the community in that regard.
The question that I don't think I heard responded to had to do with the exact location of that handicap ramp by Princess Pine. I'm not certain that I heard from the people who wanted that moved exactly what the problem was, but it seemed to be they felt it protruded too much into the street itself. Can you talk about that a bit?
I can address that actually, Mr. Schulman. Yes, the any ramp that we put in, any part, whether it's on a scenic road, anywhere within the city, we have to follow not just our own city standards, but also federal highway guidelines. And the federal highway guidelines of today, quite frankly, are much different than they were 40 years ago, perhaps whenever that particular intersection was put in. So a pedestrian ramp has to be put in at a certain radius. Now we extend ourselves to make sure that it stays within there, but we make sure that the radius itself is actually retrofitted to be able to fit a car turning around to there. Now, if it seems different, and I couldn't really say, I mean, I was looking at the Google Maps of the previous one and a picture I took the other day of this, it does not look really that different, but if it does seem to be different to a particular driver, more than likely, this is what happens. This is actually very common. It's because people are used to it a certain way. I turn in at this particular angle. Now I have to turn in a little bit over to there. But once you start to sort of get used to that, you'll see that we do it. It is actually, if it follows federal highway guidelines, is basically what I'm trying to get at over here to make sure we couldn't really put this into something. We're trying to make something fit in a tight area, but everything works as per what it's actually designed for. So
thank you for that.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead. Ann.
Of course, now I can't find it. There's a, pulled it up on the thing. There's an ADA coordinator for the city. Is it William? Difficult last name. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, not sure how to pronounce it. Is he on this call?
No, I don't think so.
To what extent was he involved in the design of this and the choices and all of that?
So
Because
I can
remember-
answer that.
Yeah.
You know, so that's a good question. So we interact with him pretty much on a daily basis. What happened is that his job is to make sure that we are really meeting all the ADA requirements when we're doing our projects. He is the one that finds us a lot of things for us to read to make sure that we are following the latest regulations and all that. When it's in regards to the design of the ramps, we are the experts on really designing the ADA ramps on the roadway. And then he just sees that kind of is getting done. That's pretty much how it works.
Okay. I recall at some of the recent budget meetings, maybe with BET, he said that there had been some projects where he came on after the fact and saw things were wrong. So I just want to make sure that all of this stuff with an ADA ramp that doesn't connect to an ADA street, that he's signed off on all of this stuff.
Some of his work is within private property, meaning inside the property line. That's where he usually focuses more. So let's say I will use City Hall as a good example. That is considered a lot, right? So it's within a private property, in our case, a public property. And we, Public Works, we take care of the right of way. That's our, we supervise. But we do work with him, and he is totally aware of our projects. And as Jim Meehan mentioned, we do the ADA ramps by federal regulations. We have to meet a certain slope, a certain radius to be able to be ADA.
So because this is the public right of way, he doesn't have the same level of review that he would for private parcels, even if they were publicly owned. Is that what you're saying?
He doesn't come and inspect unless if we can ask them, but he knows that we are doing.
Okay.
If we wouldn't be doing, he would be saying, well, what you guys are doing that you're not bringing up to ADA standards.
Okay. And I'm not sure who this is a question for, but what, losing my vocabulary, what takes precedent? Scenic road special rules or ADA?
Well, we believe that
if
in
there's
this case, it's
a
always
conflict
ADA.
between the two.
I
Sorry?
think that is ADA because ADA is really a federal requirement that we really need to meet. And that's why we ended up coming in front of you and asked for permission to install the ADA ramps last month. We did that. Because we understand that regardless of being a scenic road, ADA requirements would be above it. And that's what you guys granted. That's why we already installed the ADA ramps. Or we're in the process of, we start installing them.
Steve, does that match your understanding that whatever the scenic road limitations related to our approvals, they get superseded by ADA? However unscenic it might be.
Yeah, I would say that definitely for the handicap ramps.
Okay, thank you.
Safety concern first.
Are there any other questions?
Lou, I have a question.
Sure.
I'm a little confused at this point, but are we replacing any of the asphalt footpaths in this phase with footpaths that are not ADA compliant?
Yes. So in some of the, if there is a portion of the project where we are not proposing a full ADA sidewalk, if there is an existing non-compliance footpath that we call footpath, if it is not ADA, if there is any existing footpath that we cannot be replacing by a sidewalk, it will have a new footpath. We don't leave, when we pave a road, we don't want to come back. Usually when we do our roads, we leave like 15 years until we're back. So we make sure that even if it is an existing footpath is there, well, we make it a new footpath.
The second question is, I was very sympathetic to the asphalt curbs looking more scenic until I heard about all the safety factors this evening. Over on Weed, I believe it's Weed Avenue, there are concrete curbs that are slanted, that are less obtrusive and perhaps not as easy to run over. Is that under any consideration whatsoever?
I'm sorry, concrete curbs, you're meaning?
Concrete curbs are definitely slanted up away from the highway into the footpaths.
You mean new concrete curbs you're talking about?
No, I'm talking, I don't know how long they've been there, but they are concrete curbs on asphalt footpaths and they are slanted inward.
I'd have to see the specific location that you're be with there. I mean, if it's within our paving limits, we would replace that if it is damaged. So I can't say.
Well, I believe they were installed to be slanted. I don't believe it was any kind of accident that happened.
So, and are you sure that they're concrete? I thought they were granite.
They're granite.
Yeah, can be granite, exactly.
Well,
So
you
that's
know,
why
Lou, I'm not 100% sure that they are. They look like concrete, but perhaps they're granite. I don't know, but they're along Weed Avenue. I would, like to have somebody just take a look at that.
We'll take a look for sure. Sometimes we'll definitely gonna take a look.
I appreciate it.
And sorry, and I just wanna clarify that these ones that we are is the extruded concrete curb that we are proposing, right, on this one? Right? Is that what so it is, we have been using this all over the city in our last few projects. If you go to West Rocks, we put that there last year. We did it now at Sanger Road and all the area around that. And to be honest, I know that we got in the beginning, a lot of people were concerned about the concrete curb because when you hear concrete, you think that we're gonna look like all white and all that. After the project is complete, we didn't get as many complaints. Or I would say that we barely get any complaints about the look.
Well, if you look at the ones on Richard Avenue, they're older and they've weathered. They're not as bright white. So I will say that. And the last comment I want to make is that I did go to the area today and there's a tremendous amount of traffic at the intersection of Richards Avenue. And I looked at the ADA ramp in the corner of Bet Marley, and it does protrude into the roadway and it does go back into, with a concrete curb, it does cut rather sharply back into Bet Marley, where there is no curb whatsoever. And there was a truck that had obviously run it over because there was truck marks in the new soil. So I would just like you to take a look at that. Maybe there's a way you can ease it into the existing non-curb line rather than have it just kind of roll in like half a circle. I think that might be useful. If you would look at it, I would appreciate it.
Okay, will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, any other comments from DPW? If there are none, we will close the hearing and move on to the conversation about this. Thank you very much. Steve, Brian, language? Did we go offline there?
It didn't notify me that we did.
It is recording.
Okay. Steve, do we do simple approval of this, or do we have a document that we need to approve?
As we were sitting here, I started jotting some stuff, writing some stuff down for you guys to take a look at. I mean, per the ordinance, it says where the commission is charged with making findings of fact. So I kind of just was writing down some things. Take a look.
All right, let's take a look at what you've got.
And unfortunately, the ordinance isn't particularly helpful in terms of giving you a lot of guidance on, things you should consider and how you should make any kind of determination. Because you're taking a vote, but you're not taking, it's not like an application where you're approving it. I think it's
Right.
more similar to like an 824 or something like that.
Ladies and gentlemen, I did want to, one statement here does catch my attention. I want to clarify one particular point. Number 7, no stone walls or mature vegetation are being removed as part of the scope of work. That's true. We're not removing any structures, not to my understanding of anything. There is a 12-inch tree. It's not extremely mature, but that might have to come out due to the fact that it is leaning over into the area where a sidewalk is basically going. It would be blocking pedestrians. So it is possible we might be removing that one. We are clearing that with our city arborist. I can show you the location of that, but if anyone wants to see that.
No, thank you. Thank you, Jim. We're not supposed to be having conversations with you during this portion of the hearing.
According to the scenic road language, did it say something about how if they're going to remove stuff, we can say how they have to replant it or offset that?
Well, given that the tree is interfering, it doesn't appear to me that it should be replanted.
No, I don't have it in front of me. I couldn't remember if it said something about that.
Yeah, I think you referenced something. I'll pull it up quick.
Yeah, I don't think 1 12-inch tree is a big concern.
like just that
Yeah.
highlighted section there.
So could we put something in there that, that the arborist, the Norwalk arborist will identify a type and quantity of tree that could be planted as a replacement? Obviously not in the same place because that's where the sidewalk is. But if there's a way to sort of replace a tree in that general area that the arborist thinks would make sense, that we would recommend that happen.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, let's go back to the document then and take a look at language for that. Brian, to give them a little bit of wiggle room, that if possible, yeah, I don't know the location. I don't know what's around there. If it's not possible to replant a tree, I don't want to hold them to replanting a tree just because we've put this language in. Okay, can we have a motion to approve?
I can move.
Okay, Hector has moved it. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Richard has seconded. Let's just do this with a show of hands. This is the first and from my perspective, hopefully the only time we're going to have to deal with this issue. All those in favor? All right, Darius, I don't see your hand. Okay, it's unanimous.
Do we know how many other scenic roads we have in Norwalk?
As far as I'm aware, this is the only one.
Okay, then.
All right, see you in 14 years.
And Mr.
Hopefully
Chairman.
not, hopefully not. But
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
it. Thank you for everybody's time. Thank you so
I
much.
feel
And I want to
better.
also say that this was also a lesson learned for us. DPW, TMP, and also planning and zoning. We had to do a lot of research about the scenic road. So thank you. I appreciate all the support. Have a good one.
Thank you, everybody.
Vanessa, before you go,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, could I say one thing before she goes?
Certainly.
I live on the corner of Bain Street and West Rocks Road, so I am intimately familiar with the concrete curbs and the sidewalks. And I
Okay.
would just like to say that if I was elected Emperor of Norwalk, I would make the speed limit 25 miles an hour and try and figure out how to make people understand that stop signs and red lights and those kind of things are not suggestions. But I will say that the curbs and the lines, I can tell from the marks that are on the concrete curbs and the lack of tracks through my gardens that they work.
Okay.
So I thank you.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that you can see that. And again, as it is really we that's what we've been hearing national. That's what we changed this.
It definitely works,
will
and
be
it makes
taken.
it possible for me to take my dog for a walk on the other side of the street with the sidewalk crossings too. So I
Yeah,
think
isn't it great?
works really well.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you. Okay, next item of business is discussion of regulations revisions. Steve, you gonna handle that?
Sure, Brian and I'll kind of tag team. Brian, can you pull it up and you can actually lead through if you don't mind, and then I'll kind of chime in. Just to set it the table a little bit. We kind of just working through, and you've already approved several edits to the new regulations. The ones that you're in front of you now are ones that staff has identified or have been brought to our attention. I think the kind of big picture issues that we're seeing are really related to what goes on in the single family zones. What, outside of some of these are very minor on the clerical side, but I think a lot of them are related to, I think when we first started thinking about this process, I was kind of the mindset that the form-based code was not going to adapt well in the single family zones. But we tried to implement some of those ideas anyway. And I think that by and large, a lot of that doesn't work. So some of the things we approved had some unintended consequences. Some of the things we approved to address certain problems fixed that particular problem, but led to other problems. So we're kind of unwinding some of these now. And I think we're getting close to a complete package of proposed edits. I like to do over the next, hopefully not more than 2 meetings, maybe 3, is go over these edits again and then perhaps hold a public hearing at your first October meeting to present the kind of list of changes, and then allow the public to comment on the proposed recommendations, as well as bring to your attention any other items that they would like to see addressed. And then you can consider maybe at your first December meeting, or maybe that's your only December meeting, holding a hearing on those changes, which I don't think will be nearly as, onerous or comprehensive at what you went through, but it's just a process. This is the second step in the process. And my guess is we'll do this again, maybe 12 months from now on a smaller scale, with the idea that over the next year or so, we're kind of done really making edits, and it's in a pretty good place. So that's kind of the big picture look at things.
Yeah, so again, this is just essentially what we did is we put an email out to staff, and most importantly, our front end staff who are dealing day to day with permits and seeing what issues they're running into when they're reviewing permits. So we essentially compiled a whole list of things, of regulations, whether they need clarity, whether there's a conflict somewhere else in the regulations, or whether there's a lack of clarity for some purpose. So each of these, I don't know, we sent these out to you guys. Hopefully the link worked and you were able to kind of take a peek and see. What Steve and I are working on now is putting together some memos that say, okay, here's the problem, similar to what this document does, and then saying, here's proposed language that we think would solve the problem. And once we get that all worked out, we'll send that to you all so that you can review and consider. So I don't know if you wanted to go one by one, or if there were any ones that you had flagged saying, what does this mean? What are you guys talking about that we wanted to look at?
Brian, can I ask a question about what you just said in terms
Sure.
of you emailed the front facing staff for permitting? Did you also reach out to the enforcement staff?
So essentially the email went out to everyone in our office to say, what issues are you having? And definitely the front end staff and the enforcement staff are the folks who were able to flag most of these issues.
Okay, great.
And you might not see some of these in the package that you have in front of you now, but we have been in pretty constant communication with a list of surveyors, engineers, and some architects as well, who are kind of, some of this is kind of, putting things together and then seeing if it works, working with the design professionals who have to actually implement these things on a project by project basis. They're like, well, this regulation conflicts with this one. Here's the unintended consequence of what you approved here. So we're kind of working some of those things back. We're pretty close on a couple of the larger ones that we hope to have wrapped up by next week. And then, as Brian mentioned, we'll have probably 1 or 2, maybe 3 pretty comprehensive memos for you, hopefully within the next 2 weeks, plus this kind of comprehensive table. So you can look at those, and we'll put those up on our webpage, and then people can start to digest those and see what they think of them.
Let's go through these one at a time. Some I think we're going to get through fairly quickly. Others may require some discussion. But I would prefer to do it that way and have conversation on each one rather than just highlight those that people have questions about.
Sure. So the first one is one that Steve's currently kicking around trying to figure out a solution for, which relates to impervious surface. This is one that will probably get more clarification to you in the next couple of days. It's kind of a complicated one, so one that we're doing a lot of analysis on and figuring out a solution. Essentially what we did is under the old regulations, in particular the single family zones, you could cover so much of your lot with building. We didn't care how much you paved on your lot. With the new regulations, we factored in how much pavement and impervious surface you have total on your lot, but we didn't increase it by a lot. And what that did is it rendered a lot of properties non-conforming. So people were coming in looking to do additions or widen their driveways, and we say, you can't. And that was not really the intent. So we're kind of trying to figure out what is a reasonable number to allow for that percentage.
Brian, if you're going to share this with the public, just correct regulating in that second line.
I'll fix the spelling of impervious too. The next is a sort of a complicated one, and one that Steve hit on with the form-based requirements applying to single-family houses. There's a regulation that limited how wide the garage that faces the street could be. Now it didn't clarify whether it's an attached or a detached garage. We were kind of, I believe the intent behind it was attached garages, but it limited it to 30% of the width of the total facade of the house. And that's really problematic when you get into the smaller single family lots where you only have 50 feet of lot width. And essentially what it does is it means you can't have a 2-car garage facing the street in that zone. It makes it impossible. So we're proposing to get rid of that for the single family zones.
Get rid of it completely, Brian?
Yeah, we think it's a regulation that's probably not necessary.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly.
Brian, right after what you just fixed on regulating, it should be impervious.
Yeah, we'll do a spell check.
Everyone's good there.
Brian, could we just go back to the previous one about the garage facing the house? I remember another regulation was a garage had to be in the back and not facing the street at all. And I think, I don't know, this doesn't really address that. Is it somewhere else and I missed it? Because I think that's also another very tricky.
Yeah, so the garage will be able to face the street if it's detached, but it will still have separate setbacks than the principal structure. So usually, even under the old regulations, detached structures had to be further away from the street than principal structures. So we would keep that requirement.
But don't the vast majority of houses that are built nowadays want an attached garage?
Right, so attached would same setbacks for as the principal house, since it's attached.
So Tammy, the garage doors will be allowed to face the street.
They will. Okay. Thank you, Steve.
The next is vessels. Vessels is interesting because it's essentially boats, but it takes into account different size boats. So we're working up a reg essentially to mimic the recreational vehicle requirement, saying you can keep one on your property provided it's in the rear yard only. So this is so that people aren't parking boats, in front of their house. Retaining wall locations, right now, how we had it worded was retaining walls had more restrictive setbacks than the setbacks for the rest of the structures you could do on your property. So we're proposing to sync those up, which should align with the grading requirements that we included. So essentially right now, like if you are trying to grade your property near the property line, it prevents you from putting a retaining wall in, which isn't necessarily what we were trying to do.
But does that specify, like if you're in the flood zone where people have put retaining walls on both sides and basically made their house 12 feet above somebody else's house next door that's down below?
Yeah, so you'll still have the grading requirements that don't allow you to essentially make a mountain. You have to comply with, you can only go up by so much rise over run for your grading.
Yeah, in the height measurement for the actual house would still factor in the existing grade, regardless of what you're proposing for a retaining wall.
And flood height of structures in the flood zone is another complicated subject, but one that we're working on for a fix.
Okay, so that's somewhere else. That's not in this particular.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not going to be in here because that's going to take.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
last one we gotta fix.
Okay.
That's a next week item.
This was, it's not clear here. It will be in the memo we send. This is for, I believe it's fences in the front yard and particularly for corner lots. The regulations say it can't be more than 3 feet in height for sightline purposes, but DPW says it can't be more than 2 feet. So we're going to say go down to 2 feet to align with DPW. It doesn't make sense to come to planning and zoning and get told one thing and then go to DPW and get told another.
Never heard
I
of it.
think it includes bushes as well and shrubbery. Okay,
Right. Yep. Any obstruction. Yep.
right.
I think the next one down is the same premise. It's the same thing with sight lines. Single family dwellings and where they aren't allowed. So these are multifamily zones. So staff member had asked why they allowed in the CD3 and CD3C. It probably makes sense. Our recommendation is it makes sense in the CD3. A lot of the CD3 probably has single family dwellings. We took single family neighborhoods and upzone them into the CD3, so we don't want to make them non-conforming, and they're perfectly appropriate in that zone. The CD3C, maybe less so. That's more of your Westport Ave, Connecticut Ave, Main Ave area. It might not make a lot of sense to allow single family, so we're proposing to not permit them there. This one looks relatively straightforward. This is a type of contractor yard, and we're proposing to make it a special permit use with additional limitations in the light industrial zone. I think currently it's not permitted right now.
Yeah, and it's undefined as well, so we're working on a separate definition that we'll share with you as well.
In the accessory use table, marine commercial doesn't allow for the storage of one commercial vehicle. Marine commercial zones are typically semi-industrial waterfront properties, so a lot of them do boat storage and things like that. So allowing for more than one commercial vehicle to be stored there probably makes sense. We're proposing to allow that. Similar kind of concept storage of commercial vehicles in the accessory use table. We're proposing to say that that is allowed in the light industrial, heavy industrial, and then again, the marine commercial zone. Still in the accessory use table, proposed to add a row for trailers. Currently says they are, it says, let's see, you can see.
So Brian, what's the difference between change capital ROW to storage of commercial vehicles and add a row lowercase r ROW for trailers? I thought
No
that was
difference, I
right of
think.
way.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Okay, so it is a row, not right of way.
Right. Yeah. I think this is just to specify more clearly where trailers are allowed to be stored.
Okay. Oh, so change the row is just. Never
Yeah,
mind.
so that's like a table. So we're
Okay.
saying to add an additional row into the
Line,
table.
a row, like, okay, got it.
Yeah. Home occupations, this is more of just a for clarification's sake. In the accessory use table, I believe it is, it says that home occupations are permitted with limitations. But the limitations themselves are listed in the definition. So we're proposing to modify the definition just to take those limitations and put it into a more appropriate place where people would look. So this is more clarification on the storage of vessels or boats. So again, this is more specific to the single family zones. But to say that you can't have more than one boat, which is a separate definition, and that has to be in the rear yard. And then in the waterfront zones to say that you can store them in the CD3W and CD4W. Recreational vehicle, I'll double check on this one. We may have fixed this one under our last rewrite or our last edit. But essentially saying you can't have more than one recreational vehicle on your property and it has to be stored to the rear. I think we fixed that one. I'll double check. This is a big enforcement one. So a lot of the complaints we get is about storage of commercial vehicles. The current problem is that we define a commercial vehicle as having not more than a 1-ton carrying capacity. The issue with that is, one, that's not an easily researchable component or attribute to a truck. It's not, you can't really look up like what is the carrying capacity of a Ford F-250. It's not that simple. And then the issue is that when we have been able to find this, it applies to like your everyday truck. So like a Toyota Tacoma technically could potentially be considered a commercial vehicle. So if you have 2 Toyota Tacomas on your property, you may be in violation of the zoning regulations, which is not our intent. So our enforcement staff did some research and said there are better metrics to use to determine what's a commercial vehicle and what's not. And I believe the 2 were payload capacity and let's see what this one, it was the GVWR one. My text isn't wrapping, so I can't tell what this is saying.
Yeah,
But it's
gross,
yeah, go ahead, Steve.
is it gross weight? I think is what it refers to, of something.
Yeah, gross vehicle weight rating. So those are easily researchable and they would apply to, and based on the standards that they had proposed, would apply more to your larger trucks that you'd typically expect to see associated with a commercial business as opposed to your typical passenger vehicle. Driveways, this has been a headache for us. There's a section that says driveways have to be set back so far from your property lines, but then there's a separate section within the encroachment table that says that they can encroach into those setbacks or into those yards, and it doesn't give a maximum or a minimum. So under one section, it says, here's where your driveway can be, but then another section says, never mind, don't worry about that. So we're proposing to just eliminate it from the encroachment table and come up with a standard setback that the driveway would have to be from the property line. HVAC equipment. This is the difference between whether it's can be permitted in front of a structure or it's this concept of front yards. So right now you can't put an HVAC equipment in front of your house, I believe is how the regulation states it. But we say if it's behind the setback and near the house, it should be permissible.
Do you want to mention then that it can be put in the side yard? Because a lot of people have AC compressors on their side of their house.
Right.
It depends kind of on where.
Yeah, so
rooms
those
are.
I don't, yeah, I'll make sure that how it's written lets them be in the side yard. The how we used to do it was it essentially had to comply with the accessory structure setbacks, and then we gave you like 2-foot encroachments into the setback if you were nestling it up against the house. So we're going to do something similar to that. Open porches. So right now, how the reg reads is you could put an open porch on your house and it can go up to 50% of the setback, up to 50% of your setback. So like if you're in the CD1L zone and you have a front yard setback of 40 feet, the regulation says you could put a 20-foot front porch on your house, which we think is a little bit excessive. So we're kind of proposing to say that you can put an open porch on your house. It can encroach into the front setback by no more than 10 feet.
Are you also going to include side or backyard setbacks on that?
The intention was no, because if you were going to come in and design a house to have like a wraparound porch or something like that, we would say make it comply with the side yard setbacks, especially because when you get into those smaller zones, where you're more likely to use the encroachment, the setback's already 6 feet from the side property line, which is a little tight. So, our recommendation would be design it to comply with the 6-foot setback.
So in other words, if somebody's house was at the 6-foot setback, could they then have an additional 5-foot porch?
Not to the side. No, they'd only be able to go out.
They wouldn't
toward
be able to.
the
Okay,
front.
that's good.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Bay window and balcony encroachments, just to sync up those encroachments into any setbacks by no more than 2 feet, which was consistent with old regulations. I think this might be a complicated one that Steve was working on. Yeah, this was kind of when I mentioned earlier that the setback driveways had 2 separate standards, which we need to just sync up with one another. This one, I believe, is in relation to the commercial recreation establishments. If you'll remember when we were doing the reg rewrite, there was a lot of, these ones are tough to I mean, anything is tough to calculate a parking requirement for, but this one is particularly difficult. So we said subject to a traffic and parking management plan to be reviewed by the commission. But the problem is that we didn't make it a site plan or special permit use. So it said the use is permitted, but you have to go to the commission to get the traffic and parking management plan approved, which is difficult for not only staff, but for applicants to say, well, it's allowed, but your parking has to go to the commission. So what application do you submit? So we're just going to propose to make it a site plan use. So then that way it clarifies that it goes to the commission for a review.
Yeah, and I might add, I was just dealing with somebody that was looking at like a small indoor soccer training facility inside like a strip plaza. So it was a much smaller use. So we might want to have that be a qualifier based on like the gross floor area of the space. So if it's above like 5,000 square feet, then it would become a site plan approval. So we might tweak it a little bit that way.
Waterfront clubs, this is just to adjust the parking requirements. I think this makes it consistent with other forms of the water uses that we have. And then one that Steve had was to fix the spelling. This was to come up with a reg that kind of treats waterfront clubs differently, because under the old regs, and I think even under the new regs, a lot of the waterfront clubs were zoned in single family zones, and it's really difficult to regulate them based on that. It's because the standards are so strict for it. It doesn't work for a waterfront club to be regulated the same way as a single family house. So we're going to kind of try to come up with some language that whether it's location of accessory structures, setbacks, height of accessory structures, or principal structures, that kind of gives them some more flexibility. I think this is the same thing the third time, just for setbacks of driveways. So we kind of covered that one. This is on tree removal, and how this regulation reads is it almost sounds like you can't cut down a tree on your property, and that was not the intent of the regulation. It was really supposed to more be geared towards like clear cutting of trees. So we're proposing to delete that section. Some minor changes to add as amended.
Wait, sorry, just don't brush over that tree thing so fast. So if somebody comes to you and they're going to tear down a house and it has, let's just say it's a 1/4 acre and it has a bunch of mature trees, are they going to be able to clear cut the lot or not?
I'll take a look at the language.
The regulations allow for when there's a development, so they have to provide a site plan as part of that. So the site plan would show the new house location, the driveway, maybe they're going to put a pool in or whatever else they've got planned for the property. So they're allowed to do clearing in associated with the development plus a certain amount beyond that. So if they had a 2-acre site, for example, and they were going to build on an acre of it, but decided to knock all the trees down on the other acre, that might be a trigger for the commission to get involved on that piece.
Well,
Steve, oh, sorry, go ahead, Tammy.
Sorry, Anna, I know I've been doing most of the talking here, but my residential real estate background just compels me. There have been some recent developments in the 6th taxing district where lots have been single family lots on 1/3 of an acre roughly, completely clear cut and really to no benefit, and completely changed the character of a neighborhood. And we're not growing any more of these big old growth trees. So I would advocate that, not your example, Steve, if somebody has 2 acres and they want to clear cut the other half, but there aren't that many 2-acre lots. There are a lot of smaller lots around here, and that we should advocate for preserving as many larger old growth trees as possible, because they add value to the neighborhood. They drink all the torrential rainwater that we seem to be getting. So I think it should be worded that they need to get some type of either approval or something to just clear cut all larger old growth trees, whatever kind of verbiage you want to use. If you go and look at the corner of Witch Lane and Range Road, if you're coming from a block away, you couldn't see the sky, and now it's open and it's affected 3 houses all around it. They're in the scorching sun. So I think you just need to be really careful with this.
Yeah, we'll take
yeah.
The issue was, it was how it reads is it's like no tree in the city can get cut down. And then if you did, you needed to get a permit to do it, which is, it's hard for staff to, if first of all, it's burdensome to a person say, I need to cut down 1 tree on my property, but I have to go into City Hall and get a zoning permit to cut down.
Oh, sure,
A tree
I
on my
get
property.
that, but in terms of redevelopment, which is why somebody would be coming in, or if they were to put an addition or, tear something down. And as the land becomes more valuable, more houses are going to get torn down, and we're seeing it all across the city.
Yeah, we'll come up with some language to kind of hit that balance.
Yeah, my question is, although like it's not, what you wrote isn't exactly what you meant, rather than taking it out, try to find a way to write what you actually meant. And if our authority is questionable, can we run that down? Do we have the authority or do we not have the authority? Because if we do have the authority, then we should do whatever is within our authority in a way that can be regulated. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
okay.
our authority is pretty limited on tree removal. We don't, that might be a little bit beyond the planning and zoning powers to a large extent.
Well, what would it be, Conservation Commission?
No, it'd have to be like through an ordinance or something like that, I think would be the.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said, Steve.
Probably maybe on the ordinance level.
Ordinance, okay.
Yeah, the regulations do talk about removal of vegetation. We can provide that, link to that piece of the legislation that talks about that in detail about what you can and can't do. So I think it does address some of the things you're talking about, but we, definitely can further the discussion on it.
Referencing. This is just to help guide some folks who are making applications, just to alert them that if they're applying for a special permit, that there's these additional standards that they have to keep in mind. So it's kind of just like duplicating some language so that people know, hey, go to this section and look at these additional things you need to keep in mind. Right now, there's no signage that's allowed in the heavy industrial zone. So we're gonna say, I'm gonna say sync that up with the light industrial zone so that they have the same signage standards. This one is escaping me right now on what was contradicting each other. I can pull up the draft memo that I was working on because I have it in there. Let me see. No, maybe I'll come back to that one. Essentially, there's two regulations that contradict each other. And we're saying like, let's just delete one of them, and I can pull that up later if we still have time.
I can find it with Brian's.
Okay. The next one was adding some additional notice requirements. Let's see how we. Yeah, I think this was just to state that a separate notice be sent by regular mail to owner or occupants within 100 feet of properties. And this is more for commission level applications.
Do our regulations with that line up with the same with the zoning board of appeals? Like if somebody's, going for a variance, I know they have to send a certified letter to all the abutting neighbors. Is that the same for us?
Yeah, that's the goal, is to have our language sync up with the ZBA language. This one, I don't think anyone had anticipated happening. There was a variance, I believe was a variance application that was next to a boat club or a yacht club. And so how the regulation reads is you have to notify all the owners of individual condo units, which makes sense. But apparently at the boat clubs, they rent out the lockers and they're condominiumized. So technically they'd had to send notice to all of the owners of the individual lockers, regardless of even if they lived in Norwalk. So we are proposing, just to clarify, to say residential condominium units.
Brian, what were the two letters on 408 that were
G and J.
G and J.
403. 844 G and J.
403. Okay, sorry about that.
The next one is this is to the trigger for the sustainability building requirements for site plans and special permits. There's a line that says, in the case of development in the special district, then it says, here's all of those sustainable requirements. That wasn't the intent. The intent was to apply that to all buildings, regardless of district, that met that size. So we're proposing to delete that text so that it applies to all zones.
And just to jump in, on 403, that was pertaining to how long a sign need to be posted for certain applications, and one G said 10 days and J said 15. So we've just proposed to delete the one paragraph and have it for the 10.
This was one where it's just a section that it's still in the sustainability building requirements, and it's about the certifiable, like the proof that somebody who can say that the building will be sustainably certified is going to submit that. And it's given its own number as like a heading. It doesn't need that because it makes it sound like that doesn't apply to the whole section. So we're saying get rid of the number so that it applies to the entirety of the section. The next is to add a definition of a building material storage yard, which is a type of contractor yard. And again, you'll have more time to review the proposed definition. So don't feel like you have to take a look at it now and agree or disagree with it. There'll be time to review. And then we're going to add some limitations to that, which we don't have in here yet. With the building coverage requirement, we needed to add a definition. So we, again, similar to above, came up with a definition that you guys will have time to take a look at. And then this might be another kind of recurring problem that we've been running into is corner lots. Corner lots with the new regulations had some issues, just probably based on mostly just that with each front on each street was considered frontage. And didn't say which one was the principal or which one was the secondary, or where you measure the number of stories from, or that you measure it from both. So corner lots are having a lot of issues. So we're trying to kind of clean up corner lots to make it less difficult to do stuff that you used to be able to do anyways. One of those is determining what is actually truly the principal front of a corner lot. Under the old regulations, it was the narrowest of the two fronts. And if they were equidistant, then the property owner can choose. The new regs changed it to say that the principal frontage is whichever is the street address and has the principal entrance to the building. And that was problematic because not everybody's street address lined up with where the principal entrance was to their building. And so we don't think it's a great way to determine what is actually the principal frontage. So we want to kind of go back to the narrower of the two. And we have some language proposed, which we'll share in the near future to kind of hopefully adds more clarity than was there before as well.
Also,
Right.
keep in mind that
Someone who lives on a corner lot, the access way to the lot seems to me to make a lot of sense. Because I think I have more frontage on West Norwalk, West Rocks Road than I do on Bain Street, but my driveway is on Bain Street, and my house faces Bain Street, so, and the address happens to be Bain Street as well, so it would, I never liked that definition of, you know, whatever is the longest, that's your frontage.
Yeah, we had narrowest, so it was the opposite. So we said whichever is your whatever is less is your front. But then we did want to add in language like, but the less should meet the minimum requirement for the, so we'll send you language, and I'll be interested to see what you guys think.
well, also,
I think just
Brian,
how
sometimes, people change their address. Sometimes they'd rather be on, you know, like Richard, he might prefer to be on West Rocks than Bain, just because, you know, he gets his mail delivered at a different time or something. I don't know, but I somehow keep that in consideration too.
Right, right. The next one's just 3 different uses that sort of conflict with each other, or sort of are similar, which are animal care centers, retail of pets versus pet hospitals. I don't think I had to talk with the staff member who brought it up and kind of see what they're thinking. Essentially, these 3 things are sort of similar but different. Allowed in certain places, not allowed in certain places. So we just need to kind of add more clarity on that. This again is a corner lot issue. So the corner lot said you measure stories from the frontage, and it doesn't say whether that's the principal frontage. So therefore it has to be measured from both the principal and the secondary frontage, which is problematic. So we're saying go back to what we used to do, which was measure number of stories from the principal frontage. Minor one, which is adding a definition of terrace. This is mine. I mean, this one probably I could delete because we could just do this without commission approval, because it's kind of just, it's not really a change. It's just moving the definition instead of saying vehicle commercial to commercial vehicle, and just kind of changing what page it's on. So this one is another enforcement related one, which is the definition of boarding or rooming house. I think I worked out some language today that we'll send out. So like, for example, staff went out to a rooming house complaint. It's a single family house. It's a complaint to be a rooming house. Staff goes out there and sees that there are individual locks on each door within the house. But the property owner says that's for privacy of the people who live here, and there's nothing for really, you know, staff to say that's appropriate or not appropriate, or that is what is considered to be that would define it as a rooming house instead of a single family house. So we're going to put together some more clarification language, say if we see something like that, that's a sign that it's a rooming house and not a single family house anymore, so that we can address those issues. Parking in the front setback, we used to, under the old regs, said you can't park or create a parking space in your front setback. In the new regs, we said parking spaces have to be located in the rear yard. And the rear yard is essentially the front setback plus 20 feet, which we think is overly restrictive. So we're saying, let's go back to saying you cannot park or you cannot create a parking space in your front yard or in your front setback, excuse me. But we also don't want it to be a violation for you to park your car in your driveway that happens to be in the front yard. So we're going to have some language proposed. It's kind of another complicated one. In our opinion, it's not a violation if somebody's parking their car in their driveway that's, 10 feet off the street.
I have a question. Why did you change it to in rear yard only and define it as the setback plus X feet in the first place?
So I think when the consultant was their terminology was rear yards, front yards, side yards, and we always used front setback, rear setback, side setbacks. And I think the terminology kind of just got mixed up in translation to say the rear yard. Yeah, I don't think our intent was ever to say you have to park in the rear yard, which is your front setback plus an additional 20 feet. And that's where you can start putting parking spaces. Again, that's really burdensome to like some of those smaller lots.
Okay. And so you're going to change it to something like no parking in the front setback except for, existing approved driveway space, something like that.
It'll say you have to provide whatever the parking requirements are for the zone or for the use. And those required parking spaces need to be behind the front setback. But we're not gonna give you a zoning violation if you happen to park your car in your driveway that's not behind the front setback.
Yeah, this is one I'm working on. I think I got it in a good spot, but I haven't had anybody look at it closely yet. But I think two things that I haven't shared this with Brian yet. So, but with this, so in the smaller zones, when the front setback is 30 feet and somebody builds their house to that 30-foot mark, and then the garage is right there, that parking is right at that setback line. Also, one thing we're talking about putting in is allowing for a turnaround. So on certain streets, it's just bad practice to have anybody back their car into the road. It's fine if you're on like a lazy dead end kind of street, but if you're on a busy road, the car should be going out forward into the street. So we're providing the ability to put in a turnkey or a hammerhead where they have it like a backup area, then they can go forward out into the street. So we want to put a little bit of relief in that and sync up the changes we put in last year about that parking in the front setback area.
Steve, I know one thing that has come up that we have talked about is the difference between, forget about the driveways, parking in the front setback of a lawn where you have created a parking space there, which is not allowed, versus driving your car and parking it on your front lawn for whatever reason you decide to do that. Can that be clarified in the regulation?
I don't think it actually needs to be clarified, because as I've been reading through this, I think the way the current regulation reads, it basically says it's a zoning violation if you're parking on the grass, not in the driveway.
So it is now a zoning violation if you're parked on the grass, even if you have not created a space in that grassy area.
That's the way I'm reading it.
Because that's different than before, as you've explained it multiple times. So
And
now we can say if you're pulling up your cars on the grass, that's a zoning violation.
Right. And I mean, just thinking about it from the enforcement standpoint.
I know enforcement might be tricky, but
yeah, because you have to establish a pattern. So it's like I drive by Monday and there's a car there. Tuesday it's not there. That's going to be.
But there are other zoning enforcement things where you have to establish a pattern. But this is a difference. And
for sure, yeah.
Okay, and I think it's a good difference, and it's good to have that clarity out there for folks. Thank you.
Yep.
So Steve hit on the turnkey. So consideration for that. Adding a zoning expiration date. So this is like if you get a zoning permit, it's good for X amount of time. I don't think we've settled on a time frame for that yet. Adding a definition for live music, and this is just a definition that we used to use, so that's kind of just adding that back in. Public notice sign postings. So special exceptions, which generally more often than not go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. They're similar to variances, but not variances. The recommendation is that right now it doesn't say that they need to be posted on the property. We're saying those should require a sign to be posted on the property and mailed. We already talked about this one, so that's in there twice. This is one that I'm looking at a little bit further. There's a ZBA requirement that if you're getting a variance and it's a historic structure, it's subject to review by the Historical Commission, but there's kind of a lack of clarity on what the Historical Commission's charge is, and how that applies to the variance request. And there might be just some issue with ZBA basing a decision based on the Historical Commission's recommendation, because the Historical Commission is more charged with city-owned historic properties as opposed to privately owned historic properties. And then the next part about Historic District Commission, I think is okay. I don't think we need to touch the Historic District Commission requirement. This is an interesting one. So the public notice signs that you need to put on your property for certain applications like variances or special permits and things like that. So the requirement says the sign has to be at least 3 feet by 4 feet and all the letters need to be 4 inches high. So as people have been coming in and getting variances, they've been creating these signs. And the problem is that the 4-inch letter height requirement ends up making these signs like 6 feet by 8 feet, which is pretty massive. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, who knows? So we're saying make it so that the notice of public hearing is still 4 inches in height, but maybe the other letters are 2 inches in height, so that hopefully it still accomplishes the same goal, but it doesn't make a 8 foot by 6 foot sign. It should still be 3 feet by 4 feet, hopefully. If it's a little bit larger, I don't think that's a problem for us if it ends up being larger.
Maybe we should share that with the person from Norwalk Hospital, New Vance Health, that wanted the smaller signs, right? Come on, guys. We're getting tired. Let's have a little levity.
I mean, you don't want to go through that book again of signs for the 87th time.
That applicant.
Let's debate the serifs on it.
The next is flood requirement. It says that if you're doing some sort of flood certification that you reference this form, and that form was replaced. So we're kind of just saying, okay, let's delete that and just have it be more general language. CD1L for accessory structures has a 10-foot, I think it's a 10-foot side yard setback. All the other single family zones, the side yard setback for accessory structures mirrors the side yard setback for principal structures. So we're saying we should increase it from the 10 feet to the 30 feet so it matches, similar to all the other zones, the principal and accessory structure side yard setbacks are the same. So that would end up being more restrictive than what the regs currently require, but it would sync it up with the rest of the zones.
But sorry to ask, what about ADUs, and would that eliminate some
ADUs still
properties?
have those. ADUs still have those separate setbacks. So, yeah, ADUs are kind of in a class of their own.
Good.
Okay.
Workforce housing fractional units. Steve can probably speak on this one better than I can. I think that just needs some clarification on what happens if you're building like 13 units. So you're at 1.3 workforce housing units, kind of what the process is.
Yeah, that for some reason, that language was in the old regulations, and I could have sworn it was in the current regulations, and for some reason it wasn't included. So we're saying we should just put it back in because it's a good practice.
So that if you remember with some of the smaller lots, with when the parking gets tight, people were creating illegal parking spaces in the front yard. So we came up with some language that kind of allowed them to come up with an aesthetically pleasing parking area that would count towards their parking requirements. And it would be in the front yard, but it had to be landscaped, and there was different standards. There was a question on, can you, if I have an older house that has a one-car garage, so I'm non-conforming in terms of parking, can I put in one of these parking courts in my front yard setback that would count for 2 spaces and therefore meet, like if I wanted to do an ADU on my property that says I need 3 spaces, would those 2 additional spaces count for that? Or was the intent of this supposed to just to meet the 2 parking space requirement? So I think what we were going with is let it be used to meet the ADU parking and all those standards. What we didn't want to see happen was people take their one-car garage and convert it to living space, and then they just have these 2 spaces in front of the house. I don't think that was the intent of the regulation. It was to maintain your legal parking space and also add additional legal parking spaces. But we'll clarify that in a memo. It's kind of hard to like verbalize or picture in your head of like what the purpose of that is. Daycare special permit language. I think Michelle and Steve are working on this. Trailer definition, just to kind of specify. I think we're nearing the end, so don't fall asleep yet. Clarification on types of mail that needs to get sent for commission applications. Yeah, I think there was a conflict between whether it's certificate of mailing or certified US mail, return receipt requested. We're going with certificate of mailing. Especially because I believe the certified US mail return receipt requested, I think, is around $9 per letter now. So if you're, a person applying for a variance and you live next to a condo and you have to send 50 certified mail US or return receipt requested, that really adds up. And it could be a variance, for such a minor thing that it puts a burden on a person, with a pretty straightforward application.
And I think that language is consistent with statute. We'll double check that.
Just a quick question on this that relates back to another one. It wasn't the mailing requirement for a condominium to the management company, and then they were supposed to notify the unit owners?
Yeah, we changed it to go to each individual condo member. Personally,
What happened with that? I'm sorry, Brian.
Oh, go ahead.
There were a few instances where the condo board was notified versus the individual owners, and the board was not notifying the unit owners. So there would be an application that was like, say, on the south end towards the south end of the condominium property, and those unit owners didn't know about it and, were more affected and wanted to say something, but the condo board itself never notified them. So that's why those kind of changes were made.
Okay, thank you.
The next one, I think this was mine, and it was less so, hey, there's a problem with the regulations with, hey, what do you guys think about this? Which was for ADUs, how the language was written was you need 2 parking spaces for the single family house plus 1 for the ADU. But a lot of homes were built a long time ago, and they were built to the setback with a 1-car garage, and it's probably impossible for them without doing serious demolition work to their house to accommodate 2 additional parking spaces. So the suggestion was, what if it's just you have the 1 space and then you only need to add 1 additional space in order to do an ADU, instead of saying 2 additional spaces for an ADU in those circumstances. And that could be something you guys think about. You don't have to, agree to anything. On this parking in the rear yard only, I forgot to bring this up, is that it's really difficult for corner lots because corner lots have 2 fronts. A lot of the time they put the parking coming off one of those fronts. So essentially they really get disproportionately affected by saying parking has to be in the rear yard only.
Yeah, that's the, we're working on that would just be on the front setback.
And to my recollection, this was should have been deleted. It may have been deleted or was supposed to have been deleted. There is a minimum and maximum ground floor height for, it used to be in all of the zones and we deleted that. But somehow I think because the CD1S zone got added at the end, that it didn't get deleted from that section. It should have been. So we're proposing to delete that to say there's no minimum or maximum ground floor height that you have to be within when you're building a single family house in one of these zones. And I think that's it for now.
Cool.
Okay. That's a lot of material.
Yeah, I apologize. Some like mundane stuff, but
Yeah, well,
it's like
you know,
causing a
lot of
headache.
a lot of material for a public hearing.
Yeah, the memos will help give a little more color to why we're making some of the changes, and we'll get you those. Like we said, we'll probably have those within the next week or so, so you'll have them plenty of time to review.
Good, okay. Next item is approval of the minutes of our July 10th meeting. Can I have a motion to approve?
I can make it.
Okay, Hector has moved. Is there a second? And Darius has seconded. Just a show of hands, all those in favor?
I don't think I was there, so I'm staying.
No, you weren't. Thanks, Nick.
I was there for half the meeting, so I don't know if I should approve for the half I was there or just abstain.
That's fine. You know what? We can pass it without your vote. So
Okay.
you and Nick are abstentions. Everybody else is in favor.
Me too.
I'm sorry, who was the third?
Richard.
Oh, Richard. Okay. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we're okay. Okay. Comments of the director?
Nothing further unless you have a specific question for me.
Anybody have questions for Steve? All right, if not, moving on. Comments of commissioners? Okay, no comments. Our next meeting is August 21st. And then our first meeting in September is September 4th. In September, I'll be appointing a nominating committee. If you're interested in serving on the committee, let me know. It'll probably just be 2 or 3 people. And we will elect officers at our October meeting. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
No move.
Okay, Richard moved. Hector, did I see your hand go up?
I can second.
Second? Okay. All those in favor? We are adjourned.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Hi, all.